Hi, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Saturday afternoon live stream for Week 8 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of the next 2 hours, we're going to be talking all things fantasy football related, whether it is a starter sit question, potentially a trade question, or a waiver wire pickup question in regards to those of you who are dealing with a plethora of injuries on roster and need to get potentially a player in your starting lineup going into the week, or potentially even preparing for next week. Again, there are going to be teams on bye week upcoming, so you might want to prepare for that if you are already in a good standing. Either way, as we progress throughout today's live stream, remember, if you guys are going to send in a question that is via either the live chat or super chat, make sure you include your scoring format. Half PPR, full PPR, standard, all encompassing kind of context is very much so appreciated. On my end, it'll make it easier for me to answer the question and for me to go ahead and continue to answer questions at a consistent rate over the course of today's live stream. Again, if you're going to send in a super chat, please make sure that it's attached to the question, or if at least it's attached somewhere near it, even if you type it below. Regardless. Either way, hope you guys are doing well. Last night we were live streaming here on the channel, and as soon as I was given an indication that the LA Dodgers were going to extra innings, I was like, all right, guys, I gotta go watch my Dodgers. And man, what a way to end it with a grand slam walk-off. Freddie Freeman absolutely carrying the squad at the end there. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, those are the kind of moments we watch sports for, right? So that was obviously a great way to continue. The Lakers are 2-0. The Rams won on Thursday. LA is on fire right now. I mean, we are cooking. But either way, hope you guys are doing well. Let's get into answering questions, shall we? All right, so the first question of the day comes in from Old J Running, who says 20,000 days in a row now. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this is day 51 of consecutive live streams. Yeah, so pretty good thus far, right? Thank you, Old J. Says pick 2 for the bench. Okay, we have Jonathan Brooks, DeAndre Hopkins, Ray Davis. Yeah, if it was my choice going forward, I'd like to have Jonathan Brooks and DeAndre Hopkins on my bench going forward in this circumstance. As for your next question, also drop Juwan Jennings for Moody rest of the season. I would not. Again, going forward, I'm going to want to have Juwan Jennings on roster once he's healthy. I think that is something that is going to be of value in the long-term value. I mean, in terms of Moody, when he's going to come back, it doesn't really bother me. That team doesn't really kick too many field goals anyway, especially once they get McCaffrey back. They're just going to be a touchdown after touchdown kind of circumstance. But for right now, I just keep Jennings. Thank you. Matt sends in a question. Thank you, Matt. Matt says Garrett Wilson / Chase Brown for Mixon / JSN. Thoughts? As of right now, okay, so JSN doesn't really he doesn't control enough value, in my opinion, for him to even be considered an equal kind of option in comparison to Chase Brown. So obviously, as a duo, Chase Brown and Garrett Wilson are the most valuable kind of tandem in this scenario going forward, considering Chase Brown is going to be the RB1 of the Cincinnati Bengals rest of season. He has demonstrated it based on his overall snap counts, his overall opportunity share, and his efficiency. The tape doesn't lie. The guy continues to ball out every single week in comparison to the alternative running back, Zach Moss, within the overall offense. So if it was me and I need and require the depth of having a Garrett Wilson, Chase Brown, I'm going to keep that side. Now, if you're in a position to where you've got so much depth at wide receiver that you can give away a Garrett Wilson and not start JSN every week, because again, I would not expect you to start JSN every week, especially if DK Metcalf is going to be in the lineup. JSN has had maybe 2 or 3 solid performances. Outside of that, I'm thinking in a half PPR scoring format, he's kind of been yes, he's been a top 36 receiver, but it hasn't been very compelling. So if you've got an abundance of wide receiver depth, I'd say sure, give me Mixon and let me just have a top potential 8 running back rest of the season. And if you don't have the abundance of depth, you just keep what you have with Garrett Wilson and Chase Brown. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Joseph Romero sends in a question. Thank you, Joseph. He says, in a half PPR, we have Tua or Cousins. As of right now, so they did officially activate Tua. We don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to play. Obviously, he's still questionable. He did not practice Friday, which is very concerning. Again, those are typically not great signs, but he is trending towards playing, hopefully. As of right now, I still do have Kirk Cousins ahead of Tua Tagovailoa, based on matchup, and on top of the fact that I have no 100% indicator as to whether or not Tyreek Hill is going to play. So for now, it'll be Cousins. If by the time we get to Sunday morning, well, actually, it may not be a Sunday morning game. Let me actually check this. So if we look at Week 8 schedule, I want to see when these games specifically start to see if you have a pivoting option. So Miami plays in the morning, and Atlanta, okay, they also play in the morning. So by Sunday morning, if Tyreek Hill is active, at that point, I'm okay firing up Tua in that circumstance. Otherwise, it's going to be Kirk Cousins. Thank you. As for your next question, Flex Mooney, Brian Robinson Jr., Pearsall, or Bigsby. At this point, it might just be the Cousins-Mooney stack. In a half PPR scoring format, though, in that overall kind of position, I think it's probably just safer to run with Brian Robinson Jr. as your flex. So for right now, again, depending on whether or not Tyreek Hill's active, the quarterback position will kind of be pivoting or rotating depending on that factor. But as for a half PPR between Mooney, Brian Robinson, Pearsall, Bigsby, Brian Robinson Jr. would be the start, number one, and then it would be Mooney second, Pearsall third, Bigsby fourth. Thank you. Thomas Dabney sends in a question. Thomas, there wasn't anything attached to it, so hopefully you've typed in the live chat. If you haven't, okay, there you go. Thomas says, Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams? I don't even think that Jaden Daniels is going to play. Obviously, we did get a little bit of positive information earlier today in regards to him being at the walkthroughs, getting some treatment. Obviously, he's dealing with a rib cartilage injury. From my experience over the last couple years, whenever running backs, because those are the most typical positions in which they find themselves getting rib cartilage injuries, whatever running backs have it, from what I have been kind of familiar with, it is a pain tolerant situation. So if Jaden Daniels can fight through the pain, again, if he's starting this weekend, I would fire him up over Caleb Williams. But again, it's if in fact he's available to start in that game. If not, obviously, if it's Marcus Mariota versus Caleb Williams, we'll take Caleb within the overall matchup. And then it says, do you think Daniels will play? Again, very much so a pain tolerance thing. I mean, they can go ahead and give him a shot in the ribs and see if, they can give him some Toradol before the game and he'll be ready to go and he'll feel no pain. But it's just a matter of, does he want to do that? Obviously, we'll have to wait and see. All right, moving on to the next question. Thank you guys, Thomas. After Thomas, we had a question that came in from Ibrahim, who says, Detroit or Kansas City defense? As of this weekend, my highest ranked defense between those two would be Kansas City. So that's the preference that I have between the two. I'll take Kansas City's defense in comparison to Detroit. Again, they're both in my top 5 for the remaining, defenses that are available, though. As for the next question, how many running backs are you taking over JT rest of season in a half PPR? I would venture to say maybe, I'd have to actually kind of look at a comprehensive list of running backs. As of right now, I would still take Derrick Henry, Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, probably Achane, probably Kenneth Walker. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 off the top of my head. The argument could be made for Kamara, but considering the Derek Carr situation, I'd probably say no to that in a half PPR sense. So maybe 7 or 8. Maybe there's a running back that's not coming to mind at the moment. If Christian McCaffrey's fully healthy, that would be the 8th running back in that scenario. And then after that, it would probably be Jonathan Taylor and then the rest of the gang. So probably 7 or 8, something of that extent. Now, as for, okay, that was the last question. Thank you, Ibrahim. Appreciate it. Max sends in a question, says, I'm 5-2 currently. Trade DeAndre Hopkins / JSN for Zay Flowers. Diggs or, okay, so first and foremost, let's answer this question. Trading D-Hop and JSN for Zay Flowers, I think, is perfectly fine. Understand the risk that is inherently kind of built into Zay Flowers' production, but you will find yourself with far more competitive games for the Ravens going forward, considering their defense is not elite this year in comparison to last year. So Zay Flowers, again, I think is the most valuable prospect of this entire bunch, and yes, I would take the deal. Now, as for your next question, Diggs or Adams rest of season, I think Diggs has done enough, whether it's been with or without Nico Collins in the lineup, to demonstrate that he is going to be probably consistently in that top 13, 14 wide receiver conversation rest of way, even when Nico Collins does return from his hamstring injury. So as of right now, I'm probably leaning in the direction of Diggs. Obviously, it would require Devontae Adams' production to get to the overall state of where we need to have him at a higher overall standing than Diggs would require purely touchdowns. That is it. That is the only separating factor. Otherwise, in terms of total opportunity share, receptions, yardage, it's going to look relatively similar. It's just a matter of, can Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense score more often? And if they're going to, of course, it'll lead to potentially Adams being a little bit more valuable rest of season. Now, again, as of right now, we know that we talked about this yesterday on the live stream. Both Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard are both in the top 5 of total wide receiver targets. With Adams back into this conversation, if the touchdowns are going to be there on a consistent rate, at least one touchdown every other game, yeah, he would be more valuable. But again, it's the whole factor of, is he going to get those touchdowns, or are they going to utilize somebody else within the red zone? Like last week, of course, red zone opportunity went to Tyler Conklin, Breece Hall in comparison. So for right now, I'd kind of lean towards playing Diggs. Otherwise, again, the upside could be there. We just haven't seen enough from Adams within the offense to know for sure whether it'll transpire into automatic touchdowns on a weekly basis. All right, let's see here. Awesome RKO 4089 says pick 1.5 PPR. Tank Bigsby, JSN, Bucky Irving, or Wan'Dale Robinson. Out of that group of players, I think I actually am going to play Tank Bigsby in that scenario. So considering we have had 2 full limited weeks of practices from Travis Etienne, we still don't know whether or not he is going to practice. Again, last week, limited all week, was a game time decision, did not end up playing. There may be a very similar situation in which, of course, Travis Etienne is inactive. If in fact he is not active, I would lean towards playing Tank Bigsby there. If he is active, I would consider playing JSN in the absence of DK Metcalf. Am I 100% confident on that? No, but I probably would lean in that direction just to kind of escape from any risk that Tank could potentially present in the presence of Etienne. So JSN would be the play if Etienne's active. Thank you. Nathan Dennison sends in a question, says, should I trade Chubb and Tank Dell? Or actually, you put Chubb and Tank. So is it Tank Dell or Tank Bigsby? That is my clarifying question that I like to know for Connor. I think if, regardless of what exactly this trade ends up being, whether it is Dell or Bigsby, I probably end up taking James Conner in this scenario. Even though Chubb is going to have his full starting offensive line back, even the all-pro right guard, Wyatt Teller, is going to be returning. So again, their full starting 5 offensive linemen are back. They should be in a position where they should be able to run the ball down defensive throws. But I don't know if you guys went back and watched that game. Chubb does not look like a full range running back. It is going to take a little while for him to be at a full capacity. So until then, I mean, Connor presents so much evident value in the short term that if you're in need of a running back that you can confidently start every game henceforth, I'd be willing to take that kind of deal instead of having to wait for Chubb to maybe become the Chubb of old, or at least 70-80% of what he used to be. Derek Doug sends in a question. Says, curious again, Pearsall, Keon Coleman, McMillan in a full PPR. As of right now, considering Juwan Jennings is out, Ayuk is out, no Christian McCaffrey. Again, there's so much receiving target upside and vacated upside for Pearsall that I have no other place to go. Especially on top of it, we have Debo dealing with pneumonia. Again, if that is going to be enough of a issue for Debo to where he leaves the game again midway through, then Pearsall's value increases even more. So, I mean, if he's competing for targets with, Cowing and Chris Conley, I would anticipate that Pearsall is going to get himself the vast majority of the overall workload within the upcoming week. Again, last week's matchup was difficult against Kansas City. Going forward into this upcoming contest should be a cakewalk. Now, as for the number 2 option between Keon Coleman and McMillan, I'd lean towards McMillan. Again, he was pretty highly utilized late last week. Obviously wasn't able to get himself an abundance of overall success in the second half, but still the target opportunity was there. So if they're going to continue to try to utilize him within the scheme, it should lead to him finding himself some semblance of success to where he is a startable top 36 wide receiver option in this circumstance, in comparison to Keon Coleman, who of course has to deal with the competition of Amari Cooper with more snaps, Kincaid over the middle in a really advantageous matchup, Shakir, who is of course the favorite receiving target of Josh Allen, and the running game and any sort of receiving utilization those backfield members are able to accrue over the course of a game. So for right now, Pearsall 1, McMillan 2, Keon Coleman 3. David Dooley sends in a question. So start 2. In a half PPR, we have Reed, Chase Brown, Dell, Waddle, and Eckler. Okay, so we've got a lot of really good options here. Like really, really good options. Eckler is probably the worst of the bunch because, again, I don't know how much of a check down utilization he's going to get with Marcus Mariota in the absence of a Jaden Daniels. Even if Jaden Daniels is active, again, Eckler is still not the best play out of the bunch. So between what you have available, I'm going to probably play Waddle and Reed, especially considering Tyreek Hill is still on the fence as to whether or not he's going to play. If we're going to have any sort of limited nature of Tyreek Hill, even if, on the opposite side of the field, they have to double cover him. He tilts the field towards him. Safeties have to, pretty much line up on that side of the field. They cannot sit in the middle of the field and then just try to rotate over. So in this circumstance, Waddle and Reed are the best 2 potential options. Chase Brown, Dell, again, both of them certainly have a lot of potential within the given week, but not as much as the 2 names prior. Derek Doug says follow-up. Bigsby overall if Etienne is out. Yes. If Etienne is out, Bigsby would be the play overall. Thank you, Derek. 2 for flinching says... WI in the chat. Okay, I'm going to assume that you mean question in the chat, but I don't know what WI is. Let's see here. 2 for flinching. Okay. 2 for flinching says in a half PPR standard format, looking to make a trade. My team is AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Juwan Jennings. Running backs are Jonathan Taylor, Dobbins, Mason, Etienne, Bigsby, Tracy. Tight ends are McBride, Evan Ingram, and Ferguson. Okay. Looking to make a trade. So go find somebody who wants a wide receiver and see what you can move. Because again, you have AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those guys are going to start every single week for the remainder of the season as your wide receiver 1 and 2. And they will not come out of your lineup because they're both past their bye weeks. And again, assuming neither of them get injured, knock on wood, of course, they're going to continue to be your number 1 and 2 option. So again, you have Debo and McLaurin for a flex option. Whichever one of the two you decide to keep. Otherwise, you take one of those two and you're trying to find a running back. Because honestly, the Etienne Bigsby situation, Mason situation, and Tracy situation are not, ones that are very solidified. So if you can potentially go and upgrade a running back, that would honestly be something that you should probably look towards. You might be able to buy low on like a potential Alvin Kamara in this scenario going forward. Additionally, tight end needs to probably be shipped off. You have 3 starting tight ends in the top 10. You should probably ship off 2 of them, if not at least at very minimum, just ship off 1 of them. Who I'm keeping for rest of season is most likely Ingram and McBride, and I'd ship away Ferguson. So if you can get that done, go for it. All right, moving on to a question that came in from Tex Raider, who says, in a full PPR start too, between Pickens, Waddle, JSN. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's Pickens and Waddle. JSN is a solid option, but even in the absence of DK Metcalf, he is not he's not a wide receiver who, in my mind, is going to have himself like instant touchdown potential upside in comparison to what Pickens and Waddle presented within a given weekly basis. Pickens, now that he has an actual functioning passing quarterback, again, he's coming off a week of 9 targets against the Jets defense. I can only imagine what he's going to be able to accomplish against the Giants defense, which again is the biggest weakness of their overall defense as a whole. Their secondary has been picked on a lot this season. I think they've allowed, 5 or 6 wide receivers in the last 3 games to go over 70 receiving yards against them. It's pretty ridiculous statistics. So Pickens would be the play, Waddle alongside of him for sure. Thank you. Nick Walker says, start 1 between Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, or Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is the start. Yeah, so if I was to order them, it would be Waddle number 1, Dell number 2, and Devontae Smith number 3. Thank you. Mean DeBush sends in a question. Says, Geno, Cousins, Nix, Wilson this week, rest of season. Okay. So I think it depends, right? So Russell Wilson has a bye week next week. So obviously you can't really pick him up and then try to play him next week. So in this scenario, based on where I have that's not what I wanted to do. Let's close that. Based on what I have in terms of my current quarterback rankings, the highest ranked players out of the group that you just mentioned would be Cousins 1, Nix 2, Russell Wilson 3, and Geno Smith 4 as of this week. So Cousins would be the play this week. As for rest of season, it's probably, okay. So if you can guarantee me that we're going to get Geno and DK Metcalf back into the same conversation rest of the way, then I'd probably say it's probably Geno because of that rushing upside that he presents every week. So Geno probably rest of season once DK is healthy. Otherwise, Cousins for right now. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on to a question that came in let me actually scroll back down. 2 for Flinching had a follow-up. Says, I was thinking of offering Debo plus other for Hill. Yeah, that would be great. But I think I'm weak at running back. Thoughts on the package for Hill or a good running back? Honestly, if you can get Hill out of that deal, I think you should do so, even with your running back depth as it currently stands, because I still think there is still potential in which you could end up still getting a running back in the future with an upcoming trade. Considering it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, still, again, if you can get Hill with a package deal in which you're sending away Debo and another piece, you should do it. Thank you, 2 for Flinching. All right, let's go back to the supers really quickly. Again, for those of you who are joining us this afternoon, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. If you guys have not yet already, do me a favor, click the like button down below. It is greatly appreciated in terms of supporting the channel. Thank you. All right. I think I just crashed my YouTube, but hopefully okay, there you go. I need to refresh my page really quickly because every time I hop back from one chat to the other, it just completely breaks my entire browser. All right. Moving on to a question that came in from Meadow of Hay. Says, half PPR sit 1. Shakir, Ridley, Pop Douglas. Yeah, Ridley sits in every scenario until the end of time. I do not feel any confidence in terms of starting Ridley. Thank you. Michael Barton sends in a question. Says, PPR, Douglas, McMillan, Pollard, Tillman, or Pearsall. Okay, so first question, first and foremost. Out of those available options, it's probably Pearsall who gets the start. Pollard would probably be second. Earlier today, we were given an indication that Tyjae Spears is not going to be active, which does increase the overall workload opportunity of Pollard to an extent to where he is going to be of value in comparison to where we had him a little bit yesterday. I'd moved him down pretty considerably within my rankings because, again, if Tyjae Spears is going to be there, that means less opportunities for targets and, of course, rushing attempts. So it'd probably go Pearsall 1, Pollard 2, Douglas 3, McMillan 4, Tillman 5 as of right now. As for your second question, thoughts on Dalvin Cook? Not interested at all. I have no interest at all with Dalvin Cook. You got to remember, last season, Dalvin Cook was a part of two different teams. The Baltimore Ravens and then before that, the New York Jets. In either of those situations, he did not look like a great running back. It looks like his time has come and gone. I do believe that Rico Dowdle is the answer for this backfield of the Dallas Cowboys. I really just think that Dalvin Cook is being brought in just to give him a look. He will evidently present that he is not the Dalvin Cook of old, and from what he looked like in the Minnesota Vikings days, and it'll show relatively quickly. And even if they do give him a couple opportunities, again, it's going to be maybe 1 to 2 rushing attempts that they're taking away from Zeke, which again, those rushing attempts aren't really the greatest. It's literally just like a halfback plunge up the middle and immediate contact because this offensive line is in shambles. Thank you. Michael Delavella sends in a question. Thank you, Michael. Michael says, in a standard 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, do I trade Jonathan Taylor for Tyreek Hill? I have Saquon, Hunt, Connor, Dowdle, and Higgins, Waddle, Hopkins, McLaurin, and Devontae Smith. I think considering all the wide receiver depth that you have on roster, I don't know if it's necessary for you to make a trade of that caliber. Again, once, in fact, Kareem Hunt is to disappear with the return of Isaiah Pacheco, at that point, you'd have to start Connor every single week. He has himself, obviously, a very historic injury history that has gone on year over year. So in this scenario, I'd probably keep Jonathan Taylor for the long run, considering you still have Higgins, Waddle, Hopkins, McLaurin, and Devontae Smith. You have so much wide receiver depth. I'd be more inclined to send away 2 of those wide receivers in order to try to get back a Tyreek Hill rather than sending one of your running backs who, again, I think you will need in the long run going forward. So for right now, I'm going to say no to the overall idea of the deal, especially in a standard format where you get 0 points per reception. Thank you. Flawless sends in a question, says pick 2, Dobbins, BTJ, Najee Harris. As of this week, I'm going to play both those running backs. I'll take Dobbins and Najee Harris. Thank you. Nick Walker sends in a follow-up, says Warren, Ray Davis, Charbonnet, or other running back for depth. For depth, in terms of players that you can eventually, in time, utilize within your starting lineup because of a bye week, an injury, etc., Warren is going to be that play for depth. Thank you. You'd only ever pick up Charbonnet or Ray Davis if you're trying to have the handcuffs to your blue chip running backs, assuming you have Cook and Kenneth Walker on roster. Anakin sends in a question, says start 2. Marvin Harrison, Pearsall, Keon Coleman. As of right now, Pearsall is the automatic start out of the group. Between Keon Coleman and Marvin Harrison, I don't feel confident with either of the two, quite frankly. Marvin Harrison has to take on Jalen Ramsey this week. Again, his opportunity share has not looked great. Keon Coleman has himself a ridiculous volume of target competition as well, but played incredibly well last week within his overall means. As of right now, I probably lean towards playing Pearsall and Marvin Harrison. Is it an absolute crapshoot? Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of risk for either of the two. I just don't know if I can comfortably start Keon Coleman. I don't think I can comfortably start Marvin Harrison either, but I would assume or I would hope that his skill and at least the lack of production that he has led to the offensive coordinator maybe reevaluating the offense and trying to get him more opportunities as we progress. Jeremy Melendez says, in a 3 and 4 full PPR league, flex Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, or Wan'Dale Robinson. In a full PPR, I'm playing Wan'Dale Robinson 1, Tyler Lockett 2, and Keenan Allen 3. Thank you. Ocho sends in a question, says, in a half PPR, I need 1 running back. Chase Brown, Tracy, Irving. Chase Brown is the auto start, number 1. Number 2 would be Tracy. Number 3 would be Irving. As for your next question, I need 1 wide receiver and 1 flex. We have Dobbs, Shakir, and Bateman. Out of those 3 available options, in a half PPR scoring format, I have it as Dobbs as the number 1. And as of right now, considering I don't know the status of Flowers, I'd probably go Bateman number 2 as of right now in a half PPR. As for your other league, I need 1 in the flex, Tracy or Bateman. I don't know if Tracy's actually startable against Bateman in this circuit. I think I'd probably just play Bateman there. Again, against Pittsburgh on the road, Daniel Jones will be a significantly better quarterback, but I don't know if they're going to be able to consistently run the ball like we'd want them to with Tracy. So Tracy would have to really rely upon the receiving upside, which in this overall circumstance, I'd rather just rely upon the Baltimore Ravens scoring in a flurry and maybe one of them being caught by Bateman in this scenario. So I'll take Bateman in both those leagues. But yeah, Dobbs and Chase Brown were the prior two. Thank you, Ocho. Flipside Fishing sends in a question. Thank you, Flipside. Says in a 10-team full PPR, drop Laporta next week for Hawkinson rest of season. Let's see how Laporta plays this week. I think depending on how he performs, if he does not perform with any sort of kind of impact in the absence of Jameson Williams, then at that point, yes, we would drop him and switch off to Hawkinson rest of the way. Thank you. Andy sends in a question. Says, Dowdle rest of season. Thoughts on Cook taking first-team reps? Not interested. Again, guys, you have to remember, Dalvin Cook just, again, was nothing last year. In terms of his overall, like, he even was behind the Ravens offensive line. And that Ravens offensive line last year was elite, like top 3 in run blocking efforts. Like, I understand you could say, like, okay, the Jets offensive line was not great, Andrew. Great. Okay, that's fine. I don't even argue with that. But Breece Hall was still able to be highly efficient with that overall offensive line. And then we talk about him going to Baltimore and still not looking great. Like, in Baltimore, 8 carries for 23 yards, a 2.88 yard per carry average. With the New York Jets last season, a 3.19 yard per carry average, 67 for 214 yards. The most rushing yards he had in a game last year was 35 on 9 attempts. Again, still less than 4 yards per carry on average. He didn't look great last year. Now, again, you can take the flyer on him if you have an available bench spot, but I don't expect him to be the answer to this backfield going forward. I think his time is come and gone. We're talking about a 29-year-old running back that has been inactive all of this offseason or preseason thus far. In comparison to like a Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is joining an offense that is actually capable of running the ball. The Cowboys, have they demonstrated that they're even capable of that on a consistent basis? At times, sure, maybe. But even on top of that, you got to think about it this way. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys' upcoming schedule, where do we see them running the ball consistently? Especially in the next 4 weeks. They take on San Francisco, the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, then the Eagles, then the Texans, then the Commanders. In those scenarios, in those positions, do I see them being ahead in overall kind of game script and running the ball consistently to where we have any sort of semblance of value within these running backs? Whoever is the receiving back of this team, which again, I anticipate that to be Dowdle going forward, that is who holds the majority of the value and power for fantasy purposes. Young OG says, PPR, need 2. BTJ, Devontae Smith, or Tank Dell. As of this week, I'd probably go with BTJ and Tank Dell as of right now. Thank you. Moving on to Rocco, who says, in a half PPR, JSN, Shakir, Chase Brown, Olave, Marvin Harrison, need 2. As of right now, between these available options, I probably go with Olave alongside of Chase Brown in a half PPR. Thank you. Moving on to another question from Waleed, who says, Flex 1, Montgomery, Reed, Garrett Wilson, or Brian Robinson Jr. in a full PPR. I will take Jaden Reed there. The matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars is as good as it could potentially get. Ocho sends in a question. Says, PPR, Flex 1, Mooney, Harrison, McLaurin, Kraft, Tracy. I'm not interested in as of right now, it's between Mooney and Kraft are your 2 best options in this scenario in a full PPR scoring format. As of right now, I'm going to lean towards playing Mooney there. But Mooney and Kraft are the 1-2 combo. Thank you. Jack sends in a question. Says, Caleb Williams or Jared Goff? This week, I'd rather have Jared Goff. And honestly, for the rest of the season, I'd rather have Jared Goff. He's played out of his absolute mind as of late, and I don't think he's slowing down. The MVP Goff conversations that happened in the preseason, they're now beginning to take full form based on how he's looked as of late. Mean DeBush says, Ramondre, Warren, or Odunze in a PPR. As of this week, between the 3 of them, I'm not really interested in playing Odunze. Caleb Williams doesn't really push the ball deep down the field, and that is where Odunze is going to have to find himself the upside to be able to outperform these other 2 running backs. But as for Ramondre Stevenson and Warren, I do have Ramondre Stevenson ahead of him, ever so slightly. I have him 2 spots ahead of Warren in a half PPR / full PPR format. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. The Aggro sends in a question. It says, Komet or Hunter Henry? Thanks. As of right now, I'm going to go and lean towards Hunter Henry this week. Thank you. Prankster sends in a question. Says, PPR, Flex Pittman, Otten, Moss, or Bigsby. Kelsey's my current tight end. Got it. as of the available options, I am going to play K. Dotton as your flex. So you're pretty much going into this week playing 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends in this scenario. Thank you. Andrew sends in a question, says, what's up, Andrew? Half PPR. This week, do I play Jaden Reed or Romeo Doubs? Thank you for all the content. Honestly, I'd say you could very easily play them both. I do prefer Jaden Reed going up against Jacksonville secondary. They play the 4th most man coverage amongst all teams in the league, or I think they're either top 4, top 2, something of that extent. I don't know where they've kind of trended this last week because I haven't checked out the overall numbers. But obviously they're in the top 5 in terms of overall man coverage. Anytime we have seen Jaden Reed and this offense take on man coverage, he has dominated thus far this season. So I'm going to lean towards Jaden Reed in this scenario. That being said, I did see a stat earlier this week in regards to when we have seen dropbacks from Jordan Love over the course of the season, specifically in like the last 2 weeks here. His number 1 read in terms of his dropbacks, his first read has always been, I think it's Romeo Doubs like 27% of the time. Jaden Reed is like 23% of the time. And then everybody else kind of is in a hodgepodge scenario. So as of late, Romeo Doubs has certainly been getting the eye of Jordan Love. Like I mentioned during the week, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and Romeo Doubs has certainly gotten himself a lot of opportunity. Both are incredible plays. Both are in my top 22 top 22 wide receivers this week, but I do prefer Jaden Reed. Thank you. Ballers sends in a question. Says, in a full PPR, I'm currently 3-4. What moves should be done? My quarterback is Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. My running backs are Saquon, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Charbonnet. My wide receivers are Zay, D-Hop, Lockett, Metcalf, and Adunze. Okay, so you can go about it one of a couple ways. So you can either, first and foremost, decide, all right, listen, I'm 3-4. If I'm not able to potentially win out here, again, you're 7 weeks into the season. You have week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. You have 7 more games ahead of you. So again, you have a lot of opportunity. You have to potentially win, I would say, 5 of the next 7 weeks in order to potentially make the playoffs. But again, there's always the variable potential in which your league has a bunch of teams undefeated and a bunch of teams that are at the bottom of the pack. So where maybe you only need 6 wins. So maybe 3 of the next 7 games. Either way, in this scenario going forward, if Metcalf's not going to play for multiple weeks, maybe that is the guy that you move. Maybe you move him off in order to get another wide receiver in return. Maybe going after a potential DJ Moore, somebody that is equivalent in value, but maybe somebody is like not as keen on that player in comparison to the potential upside of Metcalf, and just give yourself a little bit more of an advantage in the short term in order to help you string together wins. Because again, we don't know what this Metcalf injury is going to entail. Obviously, we've heard that it's not as severe as it could have potentially been, but it doesn't mean that he's not going to miss multiple weeks here. Again, an MCL injury is not to be messed around with, so that is my only concern here. Otherwise, I think that is probably your biggest kind of potential for change. Taking Metcalf, potentially moving him for a wide receiver that can give you impactful value in a short term, but for the potential long term, of course, as well still, but to at least help you win now instead of having to win out later on, because then after maybe 2 weeks, he comes back, you're 3-6, and you're like, I literally have to win 5 games in a row, otherwise it's over. Thank you. Tic Tac YouTube sends in a question, says, how do you suggest to approach the trade deadline? How do I suggest to approach the trade deadline? That is such a broad question. Okay, so do you mean the fantasy trade deadline or do you mean the NFL trade deadline? Because I don't know what exactly... the question as a whole is so broad, in my opinion. I'm curious, TikTok, if you could type it in the live chat. I'm curious, what exactly are you looking for as an answer? Like, because the NFL trade deadline, that's randomness. As for your fantasy trade deadline, which I would assume is in November sometime, probably mid-November. Usually it's like November 14th. I don't know if that's still the case. In the leagues that I play in, we have no trade deadline. The only time the trade deadline ends is once the fantasy playoffs hit. And even then, there is still some circumstantial situations in which we allow trades in the fantasy playoffs within teams that are still playoff, relevant. So, yeah, I'm curious. What is your true intention for the question, so I know how to answer this? Thank you. Anonymous sends in a question, says, analysis on Dobbs versus Mooney and Ferguson versus Otten. I mean, look, Dobbs is going to get himself, I would say, probably 30% of the target share going forward. So, and against Jacksonville, it just seems like an easy, situation. I don't have to really worry about Jordan Love finding success because I know he's going to dominate in comparison to Kirk Cousins, who, again, I cannot guarantee every week that he shows up. He has not shown up every single week this year. So as of right now, Dobbs is the play. Now, as for Ferguson versus Otten, again, both those offenses are going to run through their tight end position over the middle of the field. Obviously, one of them is a little bit more, I'd say, reliant on Cade Otten performing. But as of right now, based on yesterday's overall kind of switch in my tight end rankings, I have Jake Ferguson as my number 9 and Cade Otten as my number 10. They are both tier 5 tight ends. So again, they're both going to be in a position in which they should score similar volume of points. But I lean towards playing Ferguson just a little bit more, mainly because, again, I don't know what exactly we're going to potentially see out of that out of that Buccaneers offense in the absence of Evans and Godwin. It could be, the Falcons double teaming Otten the entire game and just taking him away. Rajo says, K9, Gibbs, Jacobs, Hall, Chubb, pick 2. Yeah, I think this is pretty simple. I'm going to play Gibbs and Hall going forward. I don't know why K9 doesn't play in your league, but you must have an incredibly, pretty good positional start at flex. Easy E says, PPR, McBride, Otten, flex, Pollard, Brown, or Bateman. As of those 3, I'd probably flex Pollard, number 1, Brown 2, and then Bateman 3. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and let's see if Tic Tac was in the live chat. Tic Tac, YouTube, anything in the live chat maybe? Nothing yet? Okay, we'll go ahead and wait until send something in. Moving on to a question that came in from Easy E, who says PPR, McBride, Otten. As of those 2, I'd rather play McBride this week. Flex, Pollard, Brown, or... Oh, yeah, we already took care of this. I literally just answered that. Sorry. So, yeah, McBride and Pollard. Thank you. Austin M sends in a question, says, set my lineup. In a full PPR, we have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and 1 flex, Andrew. We have Breece Hall, Kareem Hunt, JT. Okay, Dowdle. As of those running backs, the 2 that I'm starting are Breece Hall and Kareem Hunt. As for your wide receivers, you have to start 3 of them out of Amari Cooper, BTJ, Marvin Harrison, DJ Moore, Sterling Shepard, DeAndre Hopkins. The 3 that I would start this week is DJ Moore 1, BTJ 2, Amari Cooper 3. And then within your tight end position, I'm playing Cade Otten over Mark Andrews. And then within your flex position, I am playing Jonathan Taylor. Thank you, Austin. Stephen Drake sends in a question, says, hey, Andrew, I believe you answered this yesterday, but I missed it. Mason or Achane this week, and why? In a, what does it say? 0.5 PPR, thanks. Yeah, between the 2 of them, the way that I currently have it structured, I have Mason at number 7 and Devon Achane as my number 9 at running back as of the most updated rankings. So the reason why I think, okay, look, if this was a full PPR, I think I'd blindly just throw in Achane because of the receiving upside that he provides. But considering we have a healthy and active Raheem Mostert, I think that definitely impacts the overall upside that Achane could theoretically find. Obviously, in week 1 and in week 2 of this season, even with, Tua Tagovailoa in the offense, Raheem Mostert was injured. So we saw a lot of overall touches going in the direction of Achane. I don't think that we're going to, lead to finding ourselves in a situation where Achane, very similar to week 1 and 2, is getting, week 1 had himself quite literally 17 touches. The week after had 29 touches. I don't think we're going to find ourselves with him touching the ball somewhere between 20 to 30 times within a game with Mostert active, which I think does impact his overall play. And then in regards to the Mason matchup, I think it's really advantageous against Dallas. We have seen Shanahan tear apart this Dallas defense on multiple occasions. Parsons is not active. There's just so much kind of in the momentum of the 49ers, especially considering they need this win. Both these teams obviously need the win, the Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers. This is where these teams separate. The winner of this team is going to go to the playoffs. The loser is going straight to the the top half of the NFL draft. So we'll have to wait and see. But I prefer Mason because of the half PPR format. It just makes Achane a little bit less reliable. And I do believe that Mason against the Cowboys, again, a run funnel, should find himself a lot of success, especially when they are in the absence of all these receiving options. The running game is going to be that much more impactful. John Smith says, in a 10-team, Kyler, Tua, or Cousins. As of right now, if it's a 4-point per passing touchdown league, I have it currently within the order of Cousins, Tua, Kyler, in that order. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Where's Tic Tac? Tic Tac. Anything? Tic Tac? No? All right, well, we'll wait until anything comes along. Tommy D sends in a question. Thank you, Tommy. Tommy says, hey, Andrew, in a non-PPR flex, Bigsby, if ETN sits, Marvin Harrison, DeAndre Hopkins, or Tracy. Bigsby would be the play there as the number 1 option. In a non-PPR, the number 2 option at that point would be Tracy. Number 3 would be Marvin Harrison. Number 4 would be DeAndre Hopkins. But Bigsby is the full and away go. Will Bigsby get enough opportunities versus Green Bay, as will likely be throwing more? I mean, look, I think in the absence of Travis Etienne, even if Travis Etienne's active, I believe that Bigsby has done enough to be the early down back of the offense going forward. So it's not really going to be a matter of like, is he going to get enough attempts? I don't think he's going to get enough attempts regardless of whether or not Etienne is in there, because again, I do expect the Packers to come out and boat race them and completely blow them out in the first half to put them in a negative game script. But at least we know that Bigsby's the goal line back, and that if in fact they do run the ball somewhere between 10 to 15 times, he'll probably be implicated for 12 of those carries, most likely. And based on how efficient he has been and how much the Green Bay Packers have struggled in terms of stopping the run as of late this season, again, he's still going to be a solid enough play to where obviously he's going to require a touchdown to be, fantasy relevant. Otherwise, his yardage alone is not going to be able to carry him. But in comparison to the rest of the pack, still is the best play. All right, Devin sends in a question. Devin says, Dobbs or BTJ in a half PPR? I'd rather play Dobbs this week, honestly. Thank you. Moving on to a question from Derek, who says, what's up? Start Olave or Pearsall? I'm going to lean towards playing Pearsall there. Better quarterback play. The opportunity share will probably lean in the direction of Olave getting more targets, but I think the quality of targets, because of Spencer Rattler being the quarterback, will be less. So I'll lean towards Pearsall in this scenario. All right, BT sends in a question, says Mahomes or Tua, or pick up Kirk. I'm okay just playing Tua in this scenario this week. If you want to pick up Kirk and play him, you certainly can. You'd have to drop Mahomes for that. Again, Mahomes this week is, in regards to my quarterback rankings, is my number 21 quarterback of the remaining quarterbacks left. And again, there's 30 remaining. He's behind like Dak, Baker, Mariota, Richardson, Geno, Rodgers, Wilson, Nix, Murray, Tua, Caleb, Cousins, and Purdy. Again, he's behind the whole pack. He hasn't done anything, in my opinion, to designate him as a startable option. If we look at his overall stats in a league in which you get -2 per interception, the guy's like a 13-point quarterback. And even with the impact of getting DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, Hopkins is not going to be at a full capacity this week. So again, that impact doesn't play into much of a factor as of the matchup against the Vegas Raiders this weekend. Thomas Dabney sends in a follow-up. Thomas, where is your question? There it is. I see it. Thomas says, Josh Allen, Achane, and Mixon, Neighbors, Jamar, Pitts, Jacobs as offensive starters, okay? I dropped DJ Moore to pick up, place, and put on IR. Pick up Olave and put on IR. Did I make a bad move? Yeah, I think so. I think DJ Moore has more value in the long term. I don't think it's a terrible move because both of them are still going to be startable going forward. I would assume that you're playing in a smaller league with less teams. That's why you're able to make moves of this caliber. Either way, look, you have an all-star team. Even if you make the move of dropping Olave or dropping DJ Moore, whatever it ends up being, again, you still have starters that are going to be the priority over them rest of the way. So I'm not really too concerned about it. Again, they're both going to be top 20 wide receivers rest of the season, Olave and DJ Moore. So either way, you're fine. But going forward, yes, I would prefer to have DJ Moore because I do trust the quarterback a little bit more in this scenario. All right, Jack sends in a question, says Tucker Kraft or Kelsey. Between the two of them, I'd rather play Kelsey. Now, I will admit, there is a lot more potential touchdown upside in regards to Kraft in comparison to Kelsey. Kelsey hasn't sniffed a touchdown this year. Tucker Kraft has scored, 4 in the last 4 weeks? He's been incredible in that overall capacity, and that is why we have him so highly ranked. But again, I think if you have Kelsey on roster, it is almost impossible to ever sit him. If you were getting to a point where you're comfortable sitting him in comparison to other tight ends, it'd be a great try. It would be a great time to potentially trade him away off of that kind of momentum. Now, as for Chuba Hubbard and Javonte Williams in the flex this week, I am not playing Chuba Hubbard in any of my leagues. Not a single one of my leagues this weekend will have Chuba Hubbard in the starting lineup. Now, that could be me being stupid, or that could be me understanding that they're playing against the Denver Broncos with Bryce Young at quarterback, no Adam Thielen, no Deontay Johnson, and of course, Bryce Young at quarterback. I don't know if I mentioned that again. It's not going to be a pretty sight, and I don't think they'll be able to run the ball very much in that scenario. Javonte Williams should dominate for the Denver Broncos this weekend. Zeus sends in a question with a Boromir image or icon. Says, hey, Andrew, if Higgins doesn't play, do I start Cousins or Burrow? Really good question. Okay, if Higgins is inactive this weekend, at that point, I'm curious, how did Burrow look this season without Higgins? I know it was early in the year, But in the absence of Higgins, he was still somewhat relevant. Okay, he was good there. He was solid there, even with Higgins getting limited participation. I would probably still be in the business of starting Burrow there. And I need to figure out my flex out of these options, full PPR. If Higgins plays, Marvin Harrison, Chubb, or McMillan. Okay, so if Higgins plays, he's your number one. It's not even close. As for your number two out of this group of players, I'm probably going to lean in the direction of going with... I don't love any of these guys. Okay, so it'd probably go like Higgins 1, Chubb 2, McMillan 3, Marvin Harrison 4. Thank you. Like the Jeans sends in a question, says, I missed your answer to my question. Okay, let me see if I can find it in the chat. Like the Jeans, if you can do me a favor and type your question back into the live chat, that'd be greatly appreciated. At that point, I'll be able to answer it. Thank you. Dazer sends in a question, says, BTJ or Pickens? Half PPR. I'd rather play Pickens this week. Thank you. Is Dalvin Cook going to be the factor in Dallas, or is it the Rico show? I think it's the Rico Dallas show. Rico Dallas. Yeah, it's the Rico Dowdle show going forward. That's what I believe, at least. Again, I haven't seen anything out of Dalvin Cook out of last season to make me think otherwise. Like, at least last season, Kareem Hunt was relevant in the opportunities he was given. The guy was a top 36 running back option all of last year in comparison to where, of course, Dalvin Cook is at right now in his career. All right, Jawad sends in a question. Says in a full PPR, Diggs plus ETN for Garrett Wilson plus either Pop Douglas or Eckler. As of right now, I think Diggs and Garrett Wilson, I think Diggs has a little bit more variable value going long term. As for ETN, if he can get fully healthy and be a huge workload opportunity guy within the backfield, I think he could be as valuable as... Honestly, I'd probably just keep Diggs and ETN as of right now. Wait until ETN gets healthy and then proceed forward. Thank you. Start Marv or D-Hop? I'd rather play Marv as of right now. All right, let's see here. Kaner sends in a question. Says, pick two in a full PPR. We have McConkey, we have Tillman, we have Douglas, we have Chubb. As of right now, between those available options, I'd probably go with Chubb and Douglas as the 1-2 combo. I could convince myself to play Tillman and Douglas, but I kind of want to give Tillman another week to kind of show me that him and Jameis Winston are going to be, going forward as a tandem that we can trust. Ricardo S. sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, we have Hunt/Madison. Wide receiver, we have Diggs and Cooper. Tight end, we have Otten. Bench is Eckler, Warren, Tolbert, Pearsall, and Pitts. Who do I flex? I would flex Pearsall. Thank you. And no other changes required to your line. Actually, I would potentially play Kyle Pitts over Otten. Actually, I would. That's the only difference that I potentially make. I play Pearsall at the flex, and I'd probably play Pitts over Otten, but they're not too separated within my rankings. I have Pitts as my number 8, Cade Otten as my number 10, and they're both tier 5 tight ends, so I could justify playing one over the other. So if you want to keep it as Otten, I have no issue with that, Ricardo. Thank you. All right, J Vera 04 says, Debo, Higgins, Dobbs, or Shakir? Okay, so assuming all are healthy and all are playing, Higgins would be number 1, Debo would be number 2, Dobbs would be number 3, and Shakir would be number 4. Thank you. Okay, we took care of that. I'm waiting for Like the Jeans to send something in the chat. It says, PPR, I have to flex either DeMario Douglas, Tolbert, Pearsall, Wan'Dale Robinson, or Chubb. Cool. Pearsall's the flex option there. I'm starting Henry and Jacobs and Devontae Smith and Pickens. Also, who do you like least rest of season? Out of those available options, the option that I like the least going forward is probably Tolbert, because Brandon Cooks will eventually return. But yeah, as of right now this week, your flex is Pearsall. Thank you. All right, moving on to a question that comes in from Devin, who says, Hurst or Love? I think you meant Hurts, like as in Jalen Hurts. Between Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love, I prefer to play Jordan Love this weekend. Thank you. Jayville says, should I start Waddle, Mooney, or Dobbs? I prefer in this consecutive order, Waddle number 1, Dobbs number 2, Mooney number 3. Thank you. Moving on to a question that came in from the Watch Hangout, who says, Hunter Henry or Cedric Tillman in the flex full PPR? I need upside. Oh, man. That is not an easy question to answer, because I'm of the opinion that I want to wait on Tillman. So I probably play Hunter Henry. Waleed said, damn, missed my question. Okay, Waleed, let me go back up. Let's see if I can go find your question, Waleed. So Waleed, you had asked flex Montgomery, Reed, Garrett Wilson, or Brian Robinson in a full PPR. If I'm flexing one of those players, it was Jaden Reed. Thank you, Walid. All right, scrolling back down, we had a question that came in from Emily Doyle. Thank you, Emily. Says, hi, Andrew. JSN or Rashad White in the flex in a full PPR? Between the two of them, I'd rather play Rashad White this weekend. Thank you. Luis Castillo sends in a question, says, set up my lineup. About to hand out candy. Okay, very well. About to hand out candy. What? I didn't know it was the 31st of October. What happened? I had no clue that was. It's the 26th. Is it because it's Saturday and Halloween's on a Thursday? Interesting. Either way, answering your question, Luis. Let's see here. Okay, so this is a question about candy. Okay, it says, have Snickers, Skittles, and Sweet Tarts, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, starting with Kit Kats, okay, Twix and Twizzlers on the bench, drop apples and pennies. Yeah, interesting. Last week. That's actually a really good question. I thought you were actually being serious. Yeah, I mean, look, out of those snacks, if you're one of the houses on the street that's handing out like full candy bars, those houses get raided. I mean, I'm telling you, back as a child, we tried to find the houses that were giving away the full candy bars and just, I mean, we would rotate. Go back multiple times if we had to. All right, thank you. Crusader sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, Chuba Hubbard or Raheem Mostert? Let me check my rankings. As of right now, I still have Chuba Hubbard at 26 and Raheem Mostert as my number 28. I could be convinced to play one over the other. I don't have them designated within tiers yet because I still want to go ahead and do a little bit more research before defining that. But I might get to a point where later this afternoon, by tomorrow morning perhaps, I do have Raheem Mostert ranked higher than him because I really have no interest in playing any, Panthers this weekend. Derek says, you must not have kids. I do not have kids. I'm 29 years old. I don't want to have kids right now. I'm good. Thank you very much. I have no interest in, we're good right now. Let me just deal with fantasy football. That's my number one concern. I got to deal with all my teams, not children. Let's see here. Toby says, Tank Bigsby, Tracy Irving, or Sutton Pearsall. Yeah, it's going to be Pearsall there, Toby. Start Montgomery or DJ Moore? Honestly, I think Montgomery's probably prepped for like 13 points this week. DJ Moore against Washington secondary in a full PPR, I think is more capable of scoring that kind of number or even having more upside. So I'm okay playing DJ Moore there. But understand that, again, if you want like an easy 13 points, you can find that with David Montgomery this week in a full PPR. And again, that's his floor. Start 2, BTJ, Olave, Flowers, or Debo? BTJ, Olave, Flowers, and Debo. Yeah, if Debo is healthy, he is the start. Then Flowers will be number 2, and then BTJ 3, Olave 4. Ben Pierce sends in a question. Says, full PPR flex, Waddle or BTJ? Waddle's the play. Also, BTJ, Terry McLaurin, or Devontae Smith. It would be BTJ in that scenario. Thank you. Jayville says, reasons for Dobbs over Mooney. Yeah, listen, the offense for the Green Bay Packers should be able to absolutely tear apart the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a top 4 matchup in regards to wide receiver production. It is the top matchup for quarterback production against the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. And considering this defense primarily plays man coverage, Romeo Dobbs is inclined to probably get himself very similar production to what he has seen in the last 2 weeks, which is somewhere in the range of like 14 plus points in a full PPR, if not even more, if he ends up scoring a touchdown. This secondary just, first and foremost, hasn't been healthy all season long, but on top of it, just cannot stop opposing quarterbacks and receiving options. Mooney is a solid option, but I feel like if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers aren't able to have themselves a rebuttal offensively, it will lead to just running the ball in the second half for the Falcons and less opportunities for Mooney in the long run of that game, especially if a huge point advantage is in the favor of the Falcons within that first half. Yeah, again, throwing the ball will be less of a priority, which again is my concern. Let's see here. Eric sends in a question. Says, start 1.5 PPR, Bateman, Moss, Algier, or Shepard. Yeah, I'd rather play Bateman out of the bunch. I have no interest in playing any of those other options. Thank you. Let's see here. Andrew, you look 35, my guy. Listen, it is what it is. Genetics does it. When you're bald, you look way older. That is just the fact of the matter. Listen, I've heard it 100 times. I've heard it from you guys. I've heard it from everyone. I do look older. It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you, brother. It is just the genetical factor of the receding hairline. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Let's see here. Markel Adams says full PPR, pick 2, Olave, Wicks, or Shakir. Yeah, I'll take Shakir and Olave there, Markel. Thank you. One tight end league, Kittle and Bowers. Yeah, you got to start one in the flex. You got to play one at tight end and one in the flex. I don't care what else you have in flex options, unless it's Jonathan Taylor or, unless you have, I don't know, CeeDee Lamb sitting in the flex. Bowers is going to start there. Stallions Production says, how do you see Amari Cooper for the rest of the season, and would you make a move for him? Would you trade Chubb for Cooper? Okay, hold up. Chubb for Cooper, yes, I'd make that move immediately. Or should I try for Nakua? There's no way you get Nakua. Again, I don't value Nick Chubb relatively highly. So you could try to go after Nakua, but you're going to have to find someone who actually values Chubb going forward, which again, I don't really think he is top 24-esque. I think he is probably on the fringe, being like maybe like a 25 through 28 on a weekly basis rest of the way. Aiden Johnson sends in a question, says PPR play, flex and tight end, Jaden Reed, Javonte Williams, Jacobs, Ferguson, Njoku, and who the heck is CO? Is that Kate Otten? I think that's Kate Otten. Okay, of the available options you have, Aiden, number 1, tight end is going to be Njoku. As for your flex, in a full PPR, I'm probably playing Jaden Reed there. If you want the automatic 15 points, you just play Javonte Williams. Thank you. Stallions Production sends a follow-up, says Najee Harris or James Cook. I prefer to play Najee Harris this week. Thank you. Njoku over McBride, says Tristan. Yes, Njoku over McBride. Donovan says, hey, Andrew, do you still think the Vikings defense is good rest of the season, or should I start streaming again? No, they're fine. They're fine. Again, they had the Detroit Lions curse, which, again, they should be far behind or far past going forward. Until, of course, they play the Detroit Lions once again. And then at that point, be careful. Shackle Free says, pick up Jonathan Taylor for waivers. Okay, off waivers, unbelievable, yeah. Now my running backs are the following. Pick 2, Mason, Mixon, Taylor. We're not starting Taylor this week out of what you have available. I'd rather play Mason and Mixon this week, to be honest, Shackle. And then in your flex, I'm going to flex Hunt. Also, which to offer up for trade? Kyler Murray, Superflex? If it's a Superflex format and you're trading away running backs, then yeah, you can go after like a Kyler. I don't have an issue with that, but you wouldn't send away Jonathan Taylor. You would send away like Kareem Hunt or Mason or Montgomery before you do Taylor, you know? Thank you, Shackle. Andrew sends in a question, says, hey, Andrew, sorry, I got one more question. Why are you apologizing? I don't think that's an issue. For you, I'm having a hard time picking 2 between Dobbins, Mason, Brian Robinson, and Hunt. I feel like all of these guys can go off, which, yes, you're absolutely correct in that factor. Which 2 would you pick? Okay, so considering Brian Robinson, okay, so if in fact Jaden Daniels plays tomorrow, I think the overall ranking of Brian Robinson Jr. increases vastly in comparison to where I currently have him. Am I still playing him over potentially those other options? No. As of this week, I'd rather play Mason number 1 and Kareem Hunt number 2, Dobbins number 3, and Brian Robinson Jr. number 4. The reason why I'm leaning in that direction, again, the entire Chiefs offense is predicated on running the ball. That is exactly where they succeed, and that's how they're going to succeed, especially against the Vegas Raiders, who, again, cannot play defense in that capacity. So Kareem Hunt, again, almost scored 3 touchdowns last week, should be implicated for at least, his normal 20-plus touches on the ground, probably 80 yards total and a touchdown. Pretty solid points there with 14-plus. Mason, I think, is in the same realm of possibility in which he should be able to dominate against his run-stop defense that is non-existent. Dobbins, honestly, could end up outscoring all of them because, again, the New Orleans Saints run-stop defense has been horrible this season. So in this position, yeah, I think all 3 of those guys could go off, but considering I don't know what the overall kind of position of Jaden Daniels is, whether or not he's going to be active. Again, I'm going to go Mason, Hunt, Dobbins, Brian Robinson as right now. Big Ham 100 says Guillotine League, flex spot, Keenan Allen, Mostert, McMillan, or Sutton. Out of those options, I honestly think I'm playing Sutton. Let's see here. Moving on to a question that came in from JK, who says, full PPR, if Higgins doesn't play in the flex, Dowdle, Wicks, Watson, Tracy, Singletary. Okay, out of those available options, I probably end up flexing Dowdle, number 1. Then I go Dowdle 1, Tracy 2, Wicks 3, Watson 4, Singletary 5. Also, out of that group, who am I dropping to make room for Tua? I would drop Singletary. Thank you. Gucci Han Louis Han says, my guy in a half PPR, who's my flex between Shakir, Chubb, Dobbs, or ETN? Dobbs is your flex. Thank you. Moving on to Fuzzy, who says in a wide receiver 2 conversation, Wan'Dale Robinson, Chris Tillman, you mean Cedric Tillman, right? Leggett or Keon Coleman. Out of those available options, depending on scoring format, so if it's a full PPR, it's Wan'Dale Robinson 1, Tillman 2, Keon Coleman 3, Leggett 4. If it's a half PPR, I'd be willing to go with Tillman 1, Wan'Dale 2, Keon Coleman 3, Leggett 4. No interest in playing Leggett this week, by the way, even in the absence of Deontay Johnson, because Bryce Young plays quarterback. Thank you. Snowchild says, Max Holloway crying emoji. What happened? Did he get knocked out? Is that going on right now? I'm interested. Paco sends in a question, says, I'm 6-1. With Burrow, Saquon Walker, Chase London, Kamara, Garrett, D-Hop, Mahomes, McConkey, Tracy, bench. Okay. Trade Garrett and D-Hop for Achane. Is it too much? Let me see your wide receiver core. So your wide receivers are Chase London. Okay, and then you have D-Hop. So my only concern is, like, if you give away this wide receiver depth, like, you'll have Saquon, Walker, Kamara, and Achane. You'll have 4 running backs. Then you would have to trade one of them for a wide receiver, which, again, at that point, if you can get a top 12 wide receiver in exchange for it, then I'd say yes. So I'd be willing to take the deal of getting Achane there, as long as you can flip it around and trade away Walker or Kamara, or maybe even Achane, 1-for-1 for a wide receiver 1 rest of the way. If you could do that, then sure. If not, then no. All right, moving on to Brian, who sends in a question. Says, standard scoring, choose 2 between Debo, Reed, Cooper, Mooney, and Otten. Okay, so between the bunch, if Debo's active tomorrow, which I do anticipate him to be, Debo would play alongside a Reed. I'd consider the potential of these other alternative options, but I do prefer the overall opportunity share that Debo and Reed would be implicated for within the matchup. So I'd lean in those directions. Thank you. All right, let's see. Your Shackle says, follow-up. I was asking if I should start Kyler Murray or one of those running backs. Understood. Now I get it. Yes, you would play Kyler Murray. Very seldom would I ever not play a quarterback in a Superflex format. Even in that scenario, yes, I'm still playing Kyler Murray. Got it. And if I offered, which of those running backs should I give up in a trade? Again, you want to give up Mason and Hunt first because you don't have McCaffrey or Pacheco. And then after that, the next option would be Montgomery. All right, let's see here. Stinkler, the foul, says, posting question below. Okay, single flex, half PPR. Should I flex Ricky Pearsall over Jonathan Taylor? No. Is Ricky going to pop off more than Taylor? Nope. I think Jonathan Taylor is probably a solid 12 points. I think Ricky Pearsall in a half PPR, that's what I'm kind of expecting, like 10 to 12. So that's kind of the direction I'm leaning in. I think Jonathan Taylor has more touchdown upside, and I additionally believe he'll probably be able to get himself somewhere between like 60 to 70 rushing yards. So if he scores that touchdown, he's like a 12, 13-point player. Rogo sends in a question. Says, what's up, bro? Sorry I'm late. No, you're good. Pick one in the flex in a standard half PPR. Swift, Mason, Montgomery, Cooper, Devontae Smith. Yeah, out of that group, the order in which I would proceed would be number 1, Mason, number 2, Swift, number 3, Montgomery, number 4, Amari Cooper, number 5, Devontae Smith. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Rogo. FRS sends in a question. Nothing attached to it. I see it in the chat. It says, pick 2 in the flex in a full PPR. We have Debo, Najee Harris, Marvin Harrison, Tillman, and McLaurin. Cool. I'll play Debo and Najee Harris. If Debo is inactive tomorrow, at that point, I would pivot to playing McLaurin. Also, should I start Russ, May, Richardson if Jaden doesn't play? So it depends on the schedule. NFL Week 8, it's very much so dependent on whether or not you have the pivoting option in the same window. So considering the Washington Commanders play in the afternoon, you would only be able to swap to playing Russell Wilson there on Monday Night Football, which, yes, that's what I would do. I'd look to potentially pivot to playing Russell Wilson if Jaden Daniels is inactive tomorrow afternoon. Thank you. And then it says, we get 0.3 points per completion. Appreciate it, dude. Yeah. So, yeah, Russell Wilson would be the play if Jaden Daniels can't go. Easy E says, questions in the chat. Okay, Easy. Let's see here. Let's go Control F, Easy E. Easy E. I don't see anything in the chat in terms of your question. So if you can do me a favor and retype it out. Oh, there it is. I got it. It says half PPR in the flex, Olave, Irving, Pearsall, or Hopkins. Out of those options in a half PPR, the order at which I would proceed is going Pearsall 1, Olave 2, Irving 3, and Hopkins 4 in a half PPR. Thank you. Ando in the live chat says in a half PPR, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs in a flex. We have Tyreek Hill, Drake London, Jaden Reed, T. Higgins, Barkley, Jacobs, and Connor. Okay, so out of that group, Barkley and Jacobs are your starting 1 and 2 running backs. Your starting wide receivers would be Tyreek Hill, and Drake London. And then your flex out of the group would be half PPR, probably go Jaden Reed. So yeah, Jacobs, Barkley, Hill, London, and Reed. Dan C in the chat says, in a half PPR, choose 2, Pearsall, Worthy, Dell, McConkey. Yeah, as of right now, it's Pearsall and Dell out of that group. Thank you, Dan. The End Gaming sends in a question. Says, pick 2 in this week, McMillan, Myers, Sutton, and Judy. I'll play McMillan and Sutton. Thank you. Steve says, hi, Andrew. I just got offered Njoku, Lockett, and Lazard for Neighbors. Cool. We'll take Neighbors there. I would rather have Neighbors. So, whatever that means. When you say you got offered 4 Neighbors, so is someone trying to take your Neighbors? If they're trying to take Neighbors from you, decline that immediately because that's a joke of a trade offer. If someone is saying, hey, all you have to give me is those 3 players and I'll give you Neighbors, I'll take Neighbors. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Donovan in the chat says, full PPR, should I start Goff, Kyler, or Caleb? I prefer Goff out of the group. Corey says, sorry to spam, so split Tua or Bo Nix. I have Tua ranked, I think, 1 spot ahead of Nix or 2 spots ahead of Nix. Very close between the 2 of them. Jay Stacks says, PPR, Brian Robinson, Dobbins, McLaurin. Pick 2. I'd rather play Dobbins and Brian Robinson this week. Thank you. Crusader says, Ferguson or Otten at week and rest of season. I'd prefer Ferguson this week and rest of season. Major Arms says, waiver pickup, Pearsall, Tracy, Davis, Estime. I think it depends, right? If you need the running back depth, I do believe that Tracy's going to be the starting running back of the Giants rest of the way, and I think that is very valuable. Now, if you don't need the running back and you're just looking for the best flexible option rest of the way, I think Pearsall could end up being that, considering the lack of wide receiver depth within the overall 49ers offense and the injuries that have occurred to where it props him up for potential. If it was me, I would say I'm just taking Tracy because having running back depth is of the utmost of value for fantasy purposes. So I would take Tracy 1, Pearsall 2, Ray Davis 3, Estime 4. BT sends in a follow-up, says Neighbors or dust off Waddle from the bench. Look, dusting off Waddle off the bench is not a bad idea, but again, I do not find myself ever feeling comfortable starting. I don't feel comfortable benching Neighbors anymore. That can never happen again. Big Cat sends in a question, says, I mean, it happened when he beat the crap out of that Cleveland secondary, when he went for 78 and 2 touchdowns, I was like, it's over. I will never bench this man ever again as long as he's healthy. Anyway, continuing on, Big Cat says, flex full PPR, Ramondre, Madison, Hubbard, or Deontay. Deontay's not playing this week. I have no trust in Hubbard or Madison. I'm probably playing Ramondre there. Thank you. Let's see here. Tex Raider says, wide receiver 4/5 were McConkey and JSN shipped for Debo. That's an absolute W. Well done, Tex Raider. You might not have Debo available for this week for your team because, again, he's still dealing with pneumonia, but eventually he'll be healthy. And when he is, again, he's going to be of that like top 15 upside rest of the way. Schnabel says, hey, Andrew, what do you think about Isaiah Pacheco's injury and it impacting his performance for the rest of the season? Do you think Kareem Hunt's value will continue to do well? Again, as of what I have heard from the injury that obviously was sustained by Isaiah Pacheco, it was a 6 to 8 week injury. It's sustained in week 2. It's expected to be the 8-week potential in which he returns in week 10 or 11. Again, as of right now, again, is a very impactful injury, especially for, being comfortable henceforth after because there's a clean break. But still, in this circumstance, if Pacheco is back in the lineup, there is still a chance that Kareem Hunt could get himself utilization, but it's not going to impact enough to where Kareem Hunt is making Pacheco disappear out of the top 24 conversation. Pacheco is still the preferred out of those two in the long haul. Thank you. It's the same thing with like Christian McCaffrey coming back. Is there a potential where Mason still gets himself workload utilization considering how efficient he has been? Absolutely. But is it enough to where I am not starting McCaffrey on a weekly basis? Absolutely not. Angel says, or we're hoping not. Angel says, who has more upside, full PPR, Amari Cooper or BRJ? If Jaden Daniels is active, I say that Brian Robinson Jr. has more upside. If he's not active, I think it would then just be Amari Cooper against Seattle secondary. Shacklefree says, is Higgins hurt? Yes, he's dealing with a quad injury. I think it's more of a bruise more than anything as of right now. Should I bench him for BTJ? If he's active tomorrow, you play him. Dell or Higgins if he plays. I'd rather play Higgins if he's active. Wonton. Poseidon says, in a full PPR, start quarterback into flex. We have Goff or Brock Purdy. I'd rather play Goff. Chase Brown, Tony Pollard, Rico, Pearsall, Shepard. I mean, as of those potential options, I'm going to play Pollard and I'm going to play Pearsall there, Poseidon. Gabriel Martin sends in a question. Thank you, Gabriel. Says, I need one flex of this of the bunch. Okay, very well. Kareem Hunt, Rashad White, Terry McLaurin, Romeo Dobbs, and Mooney. Yeah, Kareem Hunt is the auto start, no matter the scoring format. Thank you. Garrett Wilson, James Cook, or T. Higgins in the flex this week. As long as T. Higgins is active, he is the starter. Outside of that, if it's a full PPR, it would go to Garrett Wilson. If it's a half PPR, it'll go to James Cook. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Let's go ahead. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Nothing. Okay, very well. Debo, if healthy, Dell or Marvin Harrison, full PPR. Debo, if healthy. Yeah, as of right now, if Debo's healthy, he would get the start, Deuce. If he is not, then it would be Tank Dell as the next best option. Thank you. Francisco says, happy birthday, Andrew. I'm trading Devontae Adams and Tua for Lamar Jackson. I still have Chase, Puka, Deontay Johnson, Jennings. Any thoughts? I'm not interested in that trade, but I can understand it. I'd probably rather have the wide receiver depth, personally, especially if Adams can find the utmost of upside. But, yeah, it's only because I don't trust Tua. That's it. Like, Tua, I think, is probably going to be, like, on average, somewhere between, like, 15 to 16 points per game. On average. Again, he didn't look great last year because, unfortunately, they scored the most rushing touchdowns amongst all teams in the National Football League, or they were tied with the 49ers and Detroit Lions. If that continues to kind of be a continuing factor for the offense where they are going to lead the team in rushing touchdowns going forward, then obviously his impact is going to be pretty rough. So again, I don't mind it getting the upgrade to Lamar, but losing Adams is kind of rough there. But hey, I mean, if Lamar continues to score big points every week, 20 plus, I can understand the potential pivot in that scenario. I don't love leaving your wide receiver core as thin as it is. But again, that's why injuries will occur, the waiver will present itself, and maybe you can find some upside there. John S says, do I try to trade Christian McCaffrey? It depends. I mean, who are you going to trade him to, and what are you going to get in return? Because if you're going to trade away Christian McCaffrey now, you've been waiting since week 1. If you're going to trade away now, they better give you a top 12 running back in return. Also, would you try to play Kyler over Tua this week in a 6-point per passing touchdown league? No, I'd rather play Tua there. Thank you. Josh sends in a question. Josh says, in an 8-man full PPR, running backs are Kamara, Jacobs, Taylor, Achane. Wide receivers are London, St. Brown, Cooper, Reed. Quarterback is Josh Allen and Jordan Love. Tight end is Bowers and Kincaid. We have one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex. Thank you. Okay. I think this is very easy, Josh. You have a stud lineup. Really, there's no wrong answers. Everybody could pop off in any given week. But as of proceeding for this week, I'd play Josh Allen at quarterback. I'd follow with playing Devon Achane and Josh Jacobs as your RB1 and 2. I'd follow with playing, if you have 2 wide receivers available, Amon-Ra St. Brown and London. Your tight end is Bowers, and your flex is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Thank you. All right, moving on to Didi, who says in a 0.25 PPR with a bonus for extra 100 yards, pick team, 2 flex, 2 wide receivers. Mix. Okay, so let's see here. You have Mixon, Rashad White, Tony Pollard, Jaden Reed, you have Scary Terry, Chris Olave, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, and Devontae Smith. Okay, so of the available options, Joe Mixon is one of the flex options. Jaden Reed is one of the starting wide receivers. The second starting wide receiver, assuming Zay Flowers plays this weekend, would be him. And then the third option out of this group would be playing most likely Tank Dell. So we would go Mixon, Reed, Flowers, Dell. Now, if Flowers is inactive or there's no positive news regarding his ankle injury, it would go Mixon, Reed, Dell, and White. Thank you. J Card 429 says, in a 14-team full PPR, 2 wide receivers, 3 running backs, 1 flex, we have the following: Diggs, Debo, Waddle, Mooney, Myers, Mason, Montgomery, Mostert, Ray Davis. Also, any trade ideas? Look, so as of this week, Mason and Montgomery are your 2 starting running backs. Debo and Diggs are your 2 starting wide receivers, and Waddle sits within the flex position. Now, as for any trade ideas, I mean, again, after Mooney maybe has a pop-off performance this weekend, you can maybe ship him off. But otherwise, I don't think there's anything, unless you're trading 2-for-1s. Like, you obviously want to get a better running back. So maybe you wait until Mooney has himself a solid performance here. Or potentially, you know that Debo is healthy for the future and you're shipping off Waddle or Mooney in order to get a running back, in order to kind of fill in for Mason. Because if you don't have McCaffrey, you're going to be in a world of pain once Mason is out of the lineup and McCaffrey's back in the mix in a couple weeks here. So Waddle or Mooney are probably those chess pieces that you're trying to move in order to try to acquire some running back depth in the future, after they, of course, have good performances this week. I wouldn't trade them yet. Brian Colorado sends in a question. Thank you, Brian. Says, in a Superflex PPR, I'm 5-2. Is it possible to win all with no trades in a home league? Yeah, of course. Listen, man. There are many of home leagues in which I've seen and I've participated in which people just don't understand the value of players, to where they just sit tight, and the winner ends up winning with no trades accomplished, mainly because they got lucky off of no injuries and somehow algorithmically drafting the best overall team, aka using Andrew's rankings. So yeah, it's definitely possible. Also, drop Kirk for Tillman, T. Palmer, Christian Watson, Bateman. Drop Kirk for Tillman, Palmer. Yeah, as of right now, I'm okay dropping him for Bateman. That's fine by me. Moving on to a question from Alex, who says, sup, Drew, in a full PPR, T, Marv, or Pearsall? So it'd go T, number 1. Okay, so T. Higgins, number 1. Pearsall, number 2. Marvin Harrison, number 3. Thank you. Christian Taylor says, questions in the chat. All right, Christian, thank you. Let me see if I can find your question. Control F, Christian Taylor. All right, it says two-parter. League 1, need 2 flexes. We have Achane, Mason, DJ Moore, Connor. Cool. Achane's number 1, and I would probably lean towards playing Mason as the number 2. Next league, need 2 flex options between Flowers, McMillan, Ferguson, Wan'Dale Robinson. Both are PPR. Cool. So again, first league, Achane and Mason are set. As for the second league, if Flowers is good to go this weekend, he would be the number 1, and I would probably follow it up by playing Ferguson as the number 2 there. If Flowers is not active, I would play Wan'Dale Robinson instead of him. Thank you. Alrighty. Andrew says, sorry, I forgot to say, I have 2 running backs. I sent full team. Does that change your answer? Let me see here, DD. Two flex, 2 wide receivers. Okay, so you have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. Got it. So that changes everything. So if you have 2 running backs to start this week, it's going to be Mixon and Rachaad White. So those are your 2 starting running backs, right? Then at that point, your 2 starting wide receivers, like I mentioned earlier, are going to be Reed and Flowers. And then you would play Dell alongside of Pollard at your flex. And of course, if Flowers does not play, then it would be Dell a wide receiver, and then Pollard and Devontae Smith as your flexes. Thank you, DD. Alrighty, let's see here. I need one for the flex out of Chase, Brown, Douglas, Shakir, Shepard, or Tillman in a full PPR. Out of those available options, I think I'm just going to still stick with Chase Brown there. Brucey says Pearsall or McMillan. I'd rather play Pearsall. Sylvester says Cedric Tillman or Michael Pittman. I'd rather play... Oof, wow, that's a good one. As of right now, I probably... I don't know, actually. I'm going to plead the 5th on that one until I get to my full pledged rankings. As of right now, if I was to give you a designated answer, I'd say Cedric Tillman. But that's what scares me. I don't know if I want to suggest him just after having one solid week. Luis Castillo says, at a 10-team standard, I have Pickens, Mooney starting. Okay. Dobbs, D-Hop, Dell on the bench. Okay. Okay, I don't mind that, by the way. Again, the only thing that I would potentially change is playing either Dell or Dobbs over Mooney. But again, I mean, they're relatively close within rankings, so I can understand it. Andrews is my starting tight end, and Komet is on the bench. Any changes to make? Also, thanks for answering my candy question. Yeah, I got it. Look, at this point, I In regards to the overall context of the team, Pickens has to start. So then it's just between Mooney, Dobbs, and Dell, in my opinion. And considering it's a standard league where you get 0 points per reception, if we're just looking for the utmost of upside, I think it's probably okay with Mooney considering the matchup against Tampa Bay and considering he scored twice against them, had 16 targets. He's probably implicated for the most baseline of production in that circumstance with a standard format. So yardage and touchdowns alone. Thank you. So you're fine there. No suggestion to swap. If it was a different format, I probably would tell you to swap. Russell Wilson or JD if he plays. If JD plays, he's starting. Charlene says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, pick 2. Pickens, Mooney, JSN. I'll play Pickens and Mooney there. William Gatlin says, would you go RB2 Hunt, Swift, or Mason? Between those 3 options, I have it in the following order. Mason 1, Hunt 2, Swift number 3. Next question, another league. With DK out, would you flex Chubb, Tolbert, Bateman, Bigsby, or Pearsall? Out of those available, I'm playing Pearsall. Thank you. In a full PPR. Appreciate it. Renee sends in a question. Says, in a PPR, pick 1 flex between Worthy, McMillan, Dalvin Cook. I'd rather play McMillan out of the group. Thank you. All right. Alicia sends in a question. Says, in a half PPR, Hopkins, Dowdle. Okay, between those 2, I'd rather play Dowdle. Again, I cannot guarantee that Hopkins plays more than 40% of the snaps. Very similar to Amari Cooper last week. He'll probably get himself a couple opportunities. As to whether or not he scores a touchdown is very much so a risky factor, especially considering, throwing touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes has not been a common kind of experiment and or outcome as of late. So, So as of right now, I'd lean towards playing Dowdle in the half. As for your next question, Dalvin upgraded. Yeah, it doesn't really bother me. Kraft or Laporta, I'd rather play Kraft this weekend. Thank you, Alicia. Toby in the chat says, Cook, Connor, or Njoku in a PPR. Let me check how I had it ranked on Thursday. In terms of Thursday rankings, in terms of a full PPR, let's see where I have David Njoku in comparison. I have it as, or had it, with Connor ahead of, Connor would be the highest ranked. Thank you, Scotty. Appreciate it. Space Bjorn says, how does Hawkinson stack up in the flex option if he's healthy compared to most of the waiver wide receivers? Hawkinson would be the most valuable. Unless we're talking about the potential of like a Pearsall who could end up being the starter for that team rest of the way, which could be very similar value. But again, I'd still rather take my chances on Hawkinson there. Big Ham says, half PPR, need 2, Waddle, Mooney, BTJ. Waddle's the auto start. I think it's between Mooney and BTJ. One has a great matchup. One has a difficult one. I'm a matchups guy. I'd probably play Mooney there if it was me. Louis says in a question, says, full PPR, Reed, Mason, or Dobbins? Pick 2. I'd probably go with Reed and Mason there. Only Fantasy sends in a question. Says, in a full PPR, I need a quarterback. Murray versus Miami or Dak versus San Francisco. I'd rather play Murray versus Miami. Thank you. Nick sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew. Questions in the chat. Thank you and happy birthday. Thank you. Appreciate that. Nick, where is your question? I need to find it. Let's see here. It says, hey, Andrew, in a 4-3 league, full PPR, 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. 2 questions. Number 1, any trade ideas? 2, set up my lineup. Okay. So you have Kyler, you have Gibbs, you have Mason, you have Drake, you have McLaurin, Reed, Flowers, Higgins, Marvin Harrison, Laporta, Njoku. You have Christian McCaffrey, Chase Brown, Tracy Tua. Okay, so considering you have McCaffrey and Mason, you're good there. You wouldn't move either of those 2. You'd keep Gibbs. You have Drake London. You have McLaurin, which is solid. You have Reed, which is solid. You have Flowers, solid. Again, the only way you can really theoretically improve this team, Nick, is if you're taking 2-for-1 trades. So you're sending away, for example, Flowers and Higgins in order to get a singular wide receiver in return. Like someone's going to try to give you in return CeeDee Lamb or something of that extent. That's the only way you'd go about trades in this scenario, where you'd send Reed in Higgins or Reed in Flowers or Flowers and Higgins, something of that exchange. Otherwise, in terms of setting your lineup for this week, I think the lineup should kind of set itself going forward because of how valuable you have. You have some really valuable pieces, especially once McCaffrey returns. Like Gibbs and McCaffrey start every week rest of season. But in terms of wide receiver, like it's a no-brainer. Drake London plays every week. Considering McLaurin has the potential of the matchup itself, I'm not interested there. So I'd pivot to playing Reed as a wide receiver too. I'd like to play Higgins as your flex, assuming he's healthy. If he is not active, then you'd pivot to Flowers. And then obviously Njoku is your tight end. You could also go about it in which you can potentially go after a wide receiver or a running back for the flex position by giving away Chase Brown and Reed, or Chase Brown and Higgins, and going after maybe like a Jonathan Taylor or an Alvin Kamara of sorts. You could very easily get away with a lot of 2-for-1 trades, considering how much depth you have on roster available to you and not so many starting available spots as it currently stands. All right, let's see here. Farouk says BTJ or Marvin Harrison in a PPR. I'd rather play BTJ this week. Thank you. Appreciate it. Alrighty, let's see here. What is this new update that we see here? Nothing crazy from Ian Rappaport. Okay, cool. JK or Connor? Half PPR. I'd rather play JK Dobbins this weekend. Both are great plays. Don't get it twisted. Cousins or Caleb at quarterback? I think I'm leaning towards Cousins as of right now. What do we think about Dalvin Cook? Not interested. If you want to pick it up, that's your own prerogative. I have no interest in Dalvin Cook. I will not be picking him up in any of my leagues. Half PPR, sit one. Jaden Reed, Amon-Ra, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Waddle. Wow, that's a really good question. In a half PPR, I think I sit Waddle there. I'm starting Malik Neighbors. I'd sit Jalen Waddle, and I'd start Malik Neighbors, Jaden Reed, and St. Brown ahead of him. All right, scrolling back down, we had Bryce who says, in a half PPR, start two. We have Tony Pollard, we have Rachaad White, we have Chase Brown, we have Rico, we have Sutton, we have Demario Douglas, and McMillan. Out of those available options, number one would go to Rachaad White, number two would go Chase Brown, number three would go to Tony Pollard. So again, I'd play both those running backs. If you want, you could play Pollard over Chase Brown, but as of right now, I'm pretty comfortable with Chase Brown and Rachaad White's overall potential for upside this week. Xander O'Malley sends in a question. Thank you, Xander. Xander says, in a full PPR, flex Kelsey or Pollard? I'd rather flex Kelsey as of this week. Also, was offered Bowers for Hunt, so I took it. Yeah, absolutely. That's a clutch. Good job. Well done, Xander. Space Bjorn says, no H word in the chat, boys. That's correct. Absolutely. Yeah, that word, it just depends on how you utilize it, right? It just depends. The context matters. Christian Rookie says, in a full PPR, start to Lockett, Devontae Smith, and Dell. As of right now, I would play Smith and Dell. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Josh Holt says, hey, man, thank you for the advice, even on your birthday. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Flex, full PPR. Higgins, Debo, JT, Waddle, Devontae Adams. Out of those available options, assuming they're all healthy, the starters for this week would be Debo, Higgins. Well, hold on, wait. How many can you play, Josh? Is it just one flex spot? If it's only one flex spot, if everyone's healthy, I'm playing Debo. Otherwise, if Debo is inactive, I'm playing Jonathan Taylor there. Thank you. Actually, you know what? No. It would go Debo number one. If Higgins is healthy, he'd be two. Then it would go Jonathan Taylor 3, Waddle 4, Devontae Adams 5. Thank you. Waleed says, with Jaden Daniels potentially out, do I pick up Bo Nix or Anthony Richardson? I'd rather play Bo Nix this week against Carolina. Hunter Henry or Laporta, says Louis. I'd rather play Hunter Henry this weekend. Again, nothing that Laporta has demonstrated leads me to believe that he can absolutely have a stud week, but I'm going to be patient with him still and keep him on roster, just in the same way in which some of us did with Mark Andrews, waited for the patience, and of course he delivered as of late. Let's see here. Harmon says, hey, Andrew, PPR pick one. Do I play Reed, White, or Mooney? I'd rather play Reed out of the group. Also, my quarterback one is Darnold in a super flex. Russ or Anthony Richardson on the bench. Yeah, in a super flex, I'd rather play Russ as your QB2 going forward. Should I drop AR for May? No, I'd rather just keep AR for right now. May requires top-tier matchups. His upcoming schedule does not look pretty. Also, if Daniels can play, do I play him over and pivot over Goff? Depends when Goff plays. The issue is Goff plays at 10 a.m. and Jaden Daniels doesn't play until 1:25 p.m. PST tomorrow, so you won't have a choice to pick. So you'd have to find another pivoting option in the afternoon slate of games in order to pivot off of him. So as of right now, I would just play Goff instead of having to worry about the pivot. John D sends in a question, says PPR Tank or White? Who's Tank? Dell or Najee? Not Najee, sorry. Is it Dell or Bigsby? Appreciate it. And then your next question was Najee or Tillman. I'd rather play Najee as of right now. Let's say, for example, it's Tank Dell. I'd rather play Tank Dell over Rashad White. If it tanks Bigsby, I'd rather play White over Bigsby. Thank you. Waleed says Kraft or Andrews. I'd rather play Kraft. Very comfortably, actually. PPR drop likely for Ertz? Yes. Ricky Pearsall or Debo if he plays. If Debo plays, he takes the start. Richie says, hey, Andrew, in a half PPR, flex one spot, play one, JSN, Dell, Chase Brown, or Hopkins. In a half PPR, I play Chase Brown 1, Dell 2, JSN 3, Hopkins 4. We risking it with Tank Dell after the Goose? Yes. I think that's even more of a reason why I'm going to risk it. Because I don't expect him to be ignored for another consecutive game. I mean, he wasn't outright ignored. There were just a lot of bad passing attempts. I mean, again, nobody played well in the passing game because of how, underwhelming CJ Stroud was. But now CJ Stroud has the matchup in his career, which has benefited him the most. Taking on the Colts, he has been 3 for 3 monster performances, over 230 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in every single one of those games. Should be implicated for another solid week here. And Dell should obviously have himself a lot of upside in that circumstance. Trade Chuba Hubbard for D-Hop. I think it depends on what kind of running back you look at. You're looking down the barrel of. Like, it depends on what you have available on roster and what you need at wide receiver. Let's see here. Garrett Wilson or Jaden Reed? I'd rather play Jaden Reed. Keenan Allen or McMillan? I'd rather play McMillan. Trade Kamara for JT and Mahomes. I'm okay with that. I don't really need Mahomes. You could drop him afterward. I'd rather just have JT over Kamara the rest of the way. Bench one, Hall, JT, Swift, or Hunt. Honestly, JT gets the bench. Hall, Swift, and Hunt are better options. Michael Ortiz sends in a question, says, my good sir, I need 2 wide receivers in a flex in a half PPR. Worthy, Shakir, Myers, Rashad White, Christian Watson, and Josh Downs. Okay, as of those available, 2 wide receivers that I'm starting, as of this moment, would be Shakir and Worthy, and I am flexing Rashad White. Thank you. Also, next question, Otten or Ferguson at tight end. I have Ferguson 1 spot ahead of Otten. They're both within the same tier. So if you prefer to play Otten, go for it, but I do have Ferguson ahead of him. Thank you. Chiefs or Ravens defense this week? Angel, I'd rather play the Chiefs defense. They're my number 2 on the week. Leonard says, full PPR, pick 3, BTJ, Adams, Dobbs, DJ Moore, Dell, Higgins. Out of those potential options, the highest ranked, assuming Higgins is healthy, would be number 1. Number 2, we then pivot to DJ Moore. And then number 3, we would go to Devontae Adams. Thank you. Pickens or Smith? If it's Devontae Smith, I'd rather play Pickens this week. I don't know what other Smith there is, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Thank you. Okay, like we do every Saturday, what I wanted to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and travel on over to Underdog, put together a potential couple entries. Again, based on your guys' suggestions, maybe there are plays that you guys have seen over the course of this week that you are potentially interested in. And if you want to share it with me, let's go ahead and let's put something together here, shall we? Again, we do this every Saturday. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. But as of late, again, we're looking for the best or the most overall for potential. Again, I am very much so on board with the idea of Jaden Reed having himself a solid performance. His number at 57.5 receiving yards, I'm taking higher on that. Be careful you don't put together like the rushing and receiving, even though he gets himself 1 rushing attempt per game on average. I'm very much so comfortable with the idea of taking him higher on the 57.5 receiving yards against this defense that, again, cannot cover opposing slot receiving options, considering they are playing a vast majority of their defense within man coverage. Again, it opens up that much more opportunity for Jaden Reed in that circumstance. Full PPR, Love or Hurts? I'd rather play Jordan Love this weekend, Jorge Perez. Thank you, Jorge. Let's see here in the live chat. We have, okay, there it is. Can we give a shout out to the conveyor belt system set up to ensure the non-stop confetti falling? Listen, is the non-stop falling confetti is definitely something that I have. It's something I constructed within the stadium. Yes, it is. It's looking good. Chase or Mooney in the flex. It depends on format. If it's a full PPR, I'll take Mooney. If it's any other, then I'll just roll with Chase Brown just comfortably. Let's see here. What are the other plays that I like this weekend? Again, there's a lot of plays that I like, actually. It's just dependent on like what you want to key in on specifically. Now, considering there are like concerns with injuries that still haven't been settled, there are some other plays in this circumstance where we might want to I've thought about specifically going after Rashad White's receptions, but 3.5 is too much. It'd have to be at 2.5, but even then, that's a little bit too expensive for my mind. That there's just so much implied risk in that scenario. Now, as for CJ Stroud in terms of passing yardage alone, when I look at Stroud in terms of his overall career against the Indianapolis Colts, I mean, again, in the last 2 seasons, his overall passing yardage, 234, 264, 284. I mean, the earlier this year was the 234 productive week. Every single one of those games, 2 or more passing touchdowns. I mean, again, I think if we're going to roll with something, it's either passing yards or the potential of passing touchdowns in regards to this. But honestly, I'm just going to, like I mentioned, I'm going to double down on this idea of Tank Dell. We'll take higher on his receiving yards in this circumstance. Moving on to the back into the live chat, we had Pipe Down who sends in a question, says PPR, lineup help. We have Dak or Tua. I'd rather have Tua in my lineup. JT or Tracy. I'd rather play JT. Pick 3, Shakir, Douglas, Tracy, Pittman, Moss, or Pearsall. Out of those available options, the 3 highest ranked that I have would be Pearsall, Shakir, and Douglas in a PPR. Thank you, Pipe Down. Moving on to Nick Q, 3435, who says Flex 1, JT or Reed. In a full PPR, I'm going to probably... It's tough. I think I'll know for sure by tomorrow morning. It depends on how I want to function JT, but I think Reed is probably just slightly better. Prince says Shepard is another sleeper. He could be. But again, it depends on how much utilization he's going to get within that offense, trying to compete with targets with guys like McMillan, Otten, Rashad White, Trey Palmer, etc. McLaurin or Montgomery in a full PPR? I'd rather play Montgomery there. Again, I put in within a slip yesterday, Montgomery anytime touchdown. I think that's probably pretty safe every single week. That's another one that I probably will even double tack on in this circumstance. Tua or Goofball? Yeah, I'd rather play Jared Goff this week. Jared Goof. Rodney in the chat says standard league need 2. Hunt, Achane, Montgomery. I'll take Hunt and Achane there. I'm pretty comfortable with those 2. Over on Kincaid receptions, we took that yesterday. I think we're going to leave it at that 1 overall play. But yeah, we took that yesterday. Do you expect to see a lot of JT from this week? We have to. Anthony Richardson has been such a detriment to the offense that they have to run the ball 15 times minimum. McLaurin or Najee Harris? It's Path. I would play Najee Harris this week in that scenario. Joseph Romero sends in a question, says half PPR flex Mooney, Brian Robinson, Pearsall, or Bigsby. Out of that group in a half PPR, I'm going to lean towards playing Brian Robinson there. If Jaden Daniels is active, I'm even more confident in that scenario. But yeah, I think Brian Robinson is probably the safest play with pretty solid upside. Kate Otten, you said Kincaid. Did I? I literally read Kate Otten, but I said Kincaid. My brain is in shambles. I apologize. Schnabel says the ads are killing me, and then he took away the question. Says, should I pick up Hunter Henry or Noah Fant and start one of them over Dalton Kincaid? No, I'd probably just play Kincaid there, but Hunter Henry is still a good pickup nonetheless. I think this is a solid overall play this week. I don't think I need to make anything else attached to this. If there is any plays that, let me see here. Are there any plays for targets? Any players have target counts? Targets. Okay, so there are players with target counts. 9? Okay. That's not bad. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm just going to put this play in. The 10 for 60, no big deal. And then what I want to do is I want to see if they have first quarter receiving yards. All right. This I know is good for. What else could we theoretically... Who's another player that first quarter receiving yards I'd be interested in taking? I'm okay with that. First quarter receiving yards depends on the total of this player. 16.5. I don't think that's bad either. I'd have to go look at Amon-Ra's catalog of production to be able to confirm that. Let me actually look this up right now. While I do so, let me answer a couple more questions. Jose Rodriguez says, Garrett Wilson and Hunt for London. Yes, I'd be willing to take that, assuming you don't have Pacheco. Thank you. Stroud or Purdy? I'd rather play Stroud this weekend. Eric Turner says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, I need 2 running backs and have Mason, Achane, Gibbs, Connor already starting Hunt. Yeah, out of those available, I'd play Gibbs as the number 2 and then Mason as the number 3. Actually, considering the full PPR, I'd actually play Achane and Gibbs. Those would be the 2 that I'd play, Eric Turner. Thank you. Start Hunt or Jordan Mason. I'd probably lean towards playing Jordan Mason, but Hunt, again, is going to be right behind him, literally within my rankings. I also like Ingram receptions. That is not a bad one at all. Let me just keep looking at these overall first quarter yardage plays here in this circumstance. Let me actually look up Amon-Ra really quickly while we're on the subject. I'm actually curious what his first quarter yards look like. I'm pretty sure like in the last 3 games, they funnel target him relatively early. So let's see here. If we look at the potential of this. Nope, never mind. Amon-Ra, get off my screen. We're keeping it moving. Let's see here. Devontae Adams, 11.5. CD Lamb. What is CD at? 16.5. These are a little bit too rich for me. All right, let's see here. What is Evan Ingram? Receptions, 5.5. I probably, if I could get the lower on that on my phone. So I don't know if you guys have done this before on Underdog, but if you go on the phone in comparison to playing on the desktop, there is just more plays available. So what I mean by more plays is I can literally go onto the phone right now and take Evan Ingram going higher than 3.5 or 4.5 receptions. So at this point, I'm going to take higher than 4.5 receptions, and I'm going to put him alongside of that Drake London play in terms of first quarter yardage and the and the Tank Dell play. So first quarter yardage, I'm taking higher on that. And then I go to Tank Dell. I'm going to take higher on that as well. Again, I really do think this is a Dell week, but you know, I could get clipped. It's all good. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. All right, entry made, done. Okay, let me go ahead. Let me swap back to the live stream, answer a couple more questions before we close out today's live stream. Again, tomorrow morning, I'll be back here on the channel. Again, yeah, you see? Oh, nah, I can't. It's, wow, yellow is, that is not green, but yellow, I guess, disappears on my phone. Anyway, I took Ingram going higher than 4.5 receptions, and then Drake London going higher on first quarter receiving yards, and Tank Dell going higher on first quarter receiving yards. Thank you. Okay, so again, tomorrow morning, starting at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, because there are no London games, is going to be only a 3-hour live stream tomorrow morning. I'll have up-to-date rankings ready to go on screen, sent, good to go. Any 8-leg parlays on Underdog, Smooth Criminal says. Yesterday, in terms of overall plays that we put together, I put together a couple like touchdown parlays per se, with a lot of players scoring potential touchdowns. Let me actually just like filter over there really quickly, and then I'll just kind of share them. So let me just go back really quickly, and then we'll come back and answer a couple more questions. So these are the ones, right? This was a $5 entry for 202. Tyreek Hill anytime touchdown. George Kittle anytime touchdown. Drake London anytime touchdown. Devontae Adams and AJ Brown tomorrow. $5 for 202. It's a 40x, so I took it. And then the other one that I took was anytime touchdowns for these following players. So this was in total $10 entry for 56. Again, because they're expected to score because they're running backs, it's a little bit less of a multiplier. But I took these 4 as potential touchdowns. You could throw all these together within a slip if you want. But otherwise, go to the Hidden Gems video that I posted on Friday with the thumbnail that is this one right here. And check out the plays there. Those are more of a comprehensive. I'm more confident within those comprehensively. All right, let's see here. Answering more questions. Dr. Zinsters says, can you just do Gibbs and get the vulture protection? No. So Gibbs would only get vulture protection from players that are not running backs scoring touchdowns. So if Montgomery scores, the vulture does not protect from that. It only protects if Jared Goff or Amon-Ra or somebody else rushes a rushing touchdown who is not a running back on the team. Okay. Anyway, sorry for those of you who sent in supers. I'm getting back to those right now. Rockout says flex to Wanda Robinson, Warren, Bateman, pick up Tillman. As of this week, I'd play Bateman and Wanda Robinson there. Thank you. Rockout also says Dowdle's available. In a full PPR, we're going to stick with those 2 wide receivers. Thank you. Like the jeans, it says PPR drop Tolbert for Laporta to cover McBride in week 11. Yeah, absolutely. I dropped Tolbert for Laporta just for the potential that he somehow wakes up this week and has value going forward. Calvin Ridley or Rashad Bateman, I'd rather just play Bateman there. If ETN doesn't play, would you start Bigsby or Pollard? I'd still start Pollard in a PPR because he gets receiving utilization, in which, of course, Bigsby is not actively getting himself targets over the course of a game. Kelsey or Komet, I'd rather play Kelsey there. PPR McMillan or Pearsall, I'd rather play Pearsall. Frenzy 40K says Mostert or McMillan in a full PPR. I'd rather play McMillan in a full PPR. Any updates on Higgins? Nothing yet. We'll know by tomorrow morning for sure, though. Soap says Myers, Pearsall, Coleman, or Bucky. I'd rather play Pearsall out of that group. Moving on to a question that comes in from We Buy Homes, who says in a non-PPR flex 1, Jaden Reed, Montgomery, Smitty, or Waddle. Out of those available in a non-PPR, 0 points per reception, I'm just going to play Montgomery. Moving on, kicker and defense. Will Lutz, Jake Bates, or Younghoe Koo. Out of those three available, I'm playing Younghoe Koo as the number 1, Will Lutz number 2, Jake Bates number 3. As for defenses, Ravens, Green Bay Packers, Lions, Jets. Lions number 1, Green Bay number... Sorry, scratch that. Let me go back to my rankings. Lions number 1, Baltimore Ravens number 2, Green Bay Packers number 3, and then Jets number 4. And then we move on to a question. Hunter Mason. Again, they're back-to-back. I prefer Mason as of right now. The confetti background should be black and gold. Why? For the Steelers? They're blue and yellow mainly because of the Rams colors, right? That's why I have it like that. Let's see here. Achane or Reed, chat? I'd rather play Achane as of right now in a full PPR. Otten or Ingram? I have Ingram ranked higher. Hopkins or Dell? I'd rather play Dell. Judy or Ridley? I'd rather not play either of the two. I'd rather pick up Cedric Tillman this week. Would you trade Josh Allen for Stroud and Reed? Yes, I would. Devontae Smith or Romeo Dobbs? I'd rather play Romeo Dobbs. Ayo sends in a question, says, hey Andrew, happy Halloween. I've been offered an interesting trade. Full PPR offered Chubb/Laporta for Olave. You'd only take the deal if you believe in Laporta rest of season. Again, if you do not need... Honestly, I don't think I take the trade. I think I keep Olave. If you have an actual stable tight end, again, trading for Laporta is no guarantee for stability. So that's my only risk there. So again, if someone is going to give you Olave for that, then sure. But if not, then I just keep. White Guy says, Amari Cooper or Jalen Waddle? I'd rather play Jalen Waddle. Thank you. Taters says, would you start Mooney, Pearsall, or Hopkins? As of those three, Mooney number 1, Pearsall 2, Hopkins 3. Is Denver defense good enough to hold through bad matchups? What exactly are we referring to as bad matchups? Because when I look at Denver's upcoming schedule, right? Their upcoming games are specifically this week they take on the Panthers, then they have the Ravens, which technically would be a quote-unquote bad matchup to an extent. But then again, if the Broncos defense plays to their upside, it should be still solid. Then they have the Chiefs, which is fine. Falcons, which is fine. Raiders, fine. Browns are great. Colts are great. I think the Chargers are a great matchup. The Bengals are a great matchup. So really, there's only 1 week that I wouldn't play them. And that's quite literally next weekend, week 9, against the Baltimore Ravens. So in that scenario, sure, we could pivot off of them, but I still think that they are still going to be in the top 12 conversation, probably lower, near 12, but still a startable option. Tracy or Zach Moss, says Jorge. I'd rather play Tracy 10 times out of 10, actually. Let's see here. Awesome B says, Andrew, where can I see your rankings at? So there are 2 ways to get my ranking. Actually, there's 3 ways. First and foremost, you could just subscribe to the channel, right? We have rankings that are posted over the course of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then on Sunday mornings, I have updated rankings on screen when I live stream from 7 to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So those rankings filtered throughout on screen. We have the top 36 running backs, wide receivers, top 16 quarterbacks, tight ends, top 12 kickers and defenses on screen, available every Saturday morning on the live stream. Now, if you want all-encompassing rankings, whether that is half PPR, full PPR, top 32 quarterbacks, top 50 running backs, top 80 wide receivers, top 25 tight ends, top 100 flex, 15 kickers and defenses, full PPR, half PPR, you can either sign up via Underdog when you use the code Andrew and make that first time deposit minimum of $10. Every single Sunday for the remainder of the season, I will send you my rankings from my email directly to yours. That email, again, may end up in your spam folder, so make sure that you check that spam folder on Sunday mornings, but you can get it there, or you can check out the Patreon. There's a link down in the description. If you become a member there, you can get rankings every Thursday and, of course, Sunday morning. Additionally, you can ask me unlimited questions and get the private Discord access. Thank you. All right, moving on. We had a question from Michael, who says, I got offered Achane and Dobbins for Christian McCaffrey. Do I take it? I think if you don't have Mason, I think you absolutely take that. Even if you do have Mason, I'm thinking you might just take that anyway. Ibrahim says, Hopkins or Dobbs this week? I'd rather play Dobbs this week, easily. Very comfortably. Tank Dell or Darnell Mooney? I think it's close. I think I'll know for sure by tomorrow morning, though. I'm kind of leaning towards Tank Dell in that scenario. Hawkinson, once he comes back, or Andrews. I'd rather have Hawkinson rest of the way. Tracy or Pearsall rest of season? Again, as of right now, I don't know if Pearsall is going to guarantee himself touches. Like, he's still going to have to earn it. I think Tracy's already won the job over there. So in the long term, like having a running back that is a stud, I think is something that is very valuable, but obviously the offense he's associated with isn't great. When I look at the Giants' upcoming schedule, obviously they're not going to have to play against the Steelers every week. When I look at their upcoming schedule of games, Commanders, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Dallas, Saints, those are very good matchups for running backs. So Tracy's probably the guy I'd rather have rest of the season if you're in need of a running back and or depth in that current capacity. Let's see your shoes. It says, what's good, Andrew? In a full PPR, if Higgins does not play, are we starting Dobbs or Bateman? We'd rather start Dobbs this weekend. Thank you. Appreciate it. Tank Bigsby or Shakir in a full PPR? In a full PPR, I'd probably end up playing Shakir there. PPR, Pearsall, Keenan Allen, or McMillan? I'd rather play Pearsall out of the group. Billy Bishop says, start Chase Brown or Tucker Kraft in a half PPR. I'd rather play Chase Brown as of right now. John sends in a question, says, flex Javonte Williams or Dobbins. As of right now, they're back-to-back in my rankings, but I currently have Javonte Williams ahead of him in a full PPR. Moving on to the next question. Never mind. Your next comment was leaning towards Dobbins. Yeah, I don't mind whichever one you decide to play. Again, I think they both are going to get themselves receiving utilization. I think Javonte's a little bit more implicated within that scheme. And considering I don't expect the Carolina Panthers to move the ball ever, I think this becomes a blowout very quickly in which Javonte could get himself a lot of rushing attempts in that second half. Daniels, if he plays, or Kyler. So here's the issue with that overall question. Kyler plays at 10 a.m. Jaden Daniels plays at 1:25 p.m. tomorrow PST. So there's a 4-hour gap between those two games. Therefore, you will not know whether or not Jaden Daniels is available by the time you have an opportunity of playing Kyler Murray. So unless you pivot to playing Marcus Mariota or potentially Russell Wilson on Monday night or somebody else that is within the implicated slate in the afternoon, Bo Nix against the Carolina Panthers, you can pivot to one of those options. Otherwise, you would have to play Kyler in the morning because we will not know by tomorrow morning whether or not Jaden Daniels is ready to go, considering he is a game time decision and they will decide his availability prior to the game, probably an hour before. Keenan Allen or Wando Robinson in a standard. As of that format, I'd rather just play Keenan Allen. Speculative add Dalvin Cook. I'm not interested. If you want to, you can go for it if you have an open bench spot, but I have no interest in doing so. I think it's all exactly that, speculative. I don't think there's actually any sort of concrete evidence that gives me hope that Dalvin Cook is what he used to be for the Minnesota Vikings. I think that Dalvin Cook is come and gone, unfortunately. Which again, it's tough to say because Dalvin Cook for many years here has been one of the favorite running backs. Jorge Perez says in a full PPR, 49ers defense, are they solid start? Yeah, I believe so. Or do I try to get the Lions? I'd rather play the Lions this week, but in the I'd probably just rather play the Lions this week. Yeah. Let's see here. We had ISO Flip who says flex start Sutton, Dowdle, Pittman, or Leggett. As of this week, I'm going to play Sutton out of that group. Thank you. Moving on to Josh, who says Chargers defense or Bills defense. Packers are available to drop. Let me see here. So if we look at my current rankings, I have the Bills are there. The Chargers. Okay, so I have the Bills ahead of the Chargers defense. And I have the Packers ahead of all three defenses. So I have Packers number 10, I have Bills number 11, and I have Chargers number 12. Again, they're so close within the rankings. I'm okay just rolling with the Bills defense as of this week, or the Chargers defense, and not having to make any swaps. But yeah, it's kind of up to you. They're back to back to back. Packers number 1, Bills 2, Chargers 3. Hawkinson will, when he returns, or Mark Andrews. I mean, again, in a full PPR, it's going to be Hawkinson as soon as he returns next week. All right. Dobbins or Swift at the RB spot, half PPR. I have Dobbins ahead of Swift by 1 spot. Again, they are like Javonte, Dobbins, Swift are literally like my number 11, 12, 13 going into this weekend. Pickens or Marvin Harrison in the flex? It's 100% Pickens. Is Kamara a trade now candidate now with the injury news? No, he's playing this weekend. Again, he had a full practice designation. The fact that he is injured, but he is playing through it, leads me to believe that without a doubt in my mind, it is not as significant of an injury as he potentially portrays it to be. Merson family says, should I trade Tracy for Mostert for my bench? No, I'd rather have Tracy. Thank you. Jawan says, flex full PPR. Olave, Dell, Mooney. Thank you. As of this weekend in a full PPR, let me check my rankings. The way I have it set up, I currently have it as Mooney number 1, Dell number 2, and then it would be Olave number 3. Mooney, Dell, Olave in a full PPR. Thank you. Olave, Wicks, or Dunze half PPR. Matthew Wallace, play Olave. Thank you. All right, guys. Again, tomorrow morning, I'll be back starting at 7 a.m. If you guys want my rankings, you can find it via Underdog, or you can find it via the Patreon. Those are available. Or you can just swing on by tomorrow morning. I'll be answering questions, whether it's answering your question directly or via proxy of answering somebody else's questions, or the interpositional rankings that are on screen tomorrow. All of that will be available in order to try to, of course, help you guys capture a victory in Week 8. Again, 7 a.m. PST. Remember that. Again, outside of that, we're good to go. I appreciate y'all coming through. I think that's where we're going to call it in regards to today's stream. I'm going to answer 2 more questions here, and then I'm going to head out. I got to go, of course, prepare. I got a lot of people to see, places to be, but then obviously I get it back home as soon as possible in order to conclude these rankings, get all the designations. We won't know the overall status of a lot of players until tomorrow morning, like Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Zay Flowers, Jaden Daniels. So again, keep that in mind. Thank you. Akuma187 says, 10-team PPR, want to trade Olave or Waddle for either Rachaad White or Chase Brown. Okay. Or Pollard. Understood. Best trade scenario. Random, didn't you have a clothing line? Okay, let's answer the first question first and foremost. Trading Olave or Waddle for either Rachaad White or Chase Brown or Pollard. I would be keeping Waddle for the rest of the season, and I would be looking to trade Olave for, if I had a choice, probably Pollard. That's the way I'd go about it. That's the best case scenario in my opinion. Now, as for your second question, yes, last season we did have a merch line in regards to the channel that was available, but that was a one-season thing, limited drops. As soon as that sold out, I removed it and it was gone. So it was a limited thing from last season. If it comes back in the future, again, I mean, I probably doubt that it comes back into the future. It was a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of time and money to get that to get to where it was. So that was probably the one time that I run that. If I do it again, it would be a long time in the future from now to be able to go through another endeavor of that nature. Again, it is a difficult business to run in regards to clothing. That is definitely not one that is, it's definitely an interesting learning experience. Peter sends in a question, says, PPR, pick one between Dell, Marvin Harrison, Wicks, Bateman. If no Zay Flowers, it would be Dell. Thank you, Peter. Okay, guys, I appreciate y'all. That's going to cover it. Until tomorrow morning, have a great rest of your night. I got to go watch the Dodgers win another game and advance another potential victory within the overall World Series. Until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.